All right, welcome everyone. This is New Earth Mystery School. My name is Miriam Hassan, and we are talking about self-love this month. Last class in Self 1 1.0, I was talking a little bit about how I teach and practice self-love, which is starting with the basis of actually understanding what the self is, and that the self is not the personality, the self is not the persona, it's not the identity. So when we're talking about self-love, for me, it's about understanding who is the self and what is the self. And some people refer to it as the higher self, some people refer to it as the soul, the inner being. It's the part of you that is greater than just this human experience. And when you are practicing self-love, for me, you realize that the self actually is love. So you become love itself. And then you have the ability to direct that love and that compassion and kindness towards others. And you are basically a conduit for that energy. So that's how I understand and experience and teach self-love. Oftentimes when we think about self-love, what we're actually talking about is loving the identity or loving the personality. And so we're kind of moving a little bit beyond that paradigm and connecting more with the true self. And we all had an opportunity to just kind of like turn the focus inward, tune in, and actually just feel that space where the self is ever present and still in there as the witness of everything else that's happening in this cosmic play. And so we played around with that a little bit, and you all saw how easy it is to just be the self because you're never not yourself, right? Although we overlay all of these different lenses and filters and perspectives over top of the experience of the self is always there. So you never have to try to, become yourself. You're always yourself. So we used declarations to affirm. We created I am declarations last class. Have you all been working with the declarations that you created? Have you been creating new ones? Let me know in the chat how that process felt for you all. Great. Awesome. Yay. I love it. So we do have a guest today. We have Karen Neverland here visiting us. She is a person that I connected with online, and I fell in love with her work immediately. What I love about Karen's work is that there are a lot of people that talk about wellness, that talk about spiritual practices, and then there are people that talk pretty clearly about ascension. Yay, Karen! Someone in the chat. And I love that, like myself, I feel that you weave in a conversation around ascension. And that for me is really what the self-love journey is. It is a journey of ascension and returning to source, which is something for me that is more fundamental and bigger and greater, and also just more available than just things like talking about wellness and sort of these other transient experiences that we have here in the earth school, right? And really getting to the heart of it, which is ascension for me. And I thought that that's why I wanted to bring Karen on as our guest for this particular class. And it also was confirmed because I think was it last class or it had to have been last month. Someone posted a link to Karen's work in the chat when we were talking about impact medicine. So I said, okay, this is a confirmation of what I was already feeling. And so we are welcoming Karen Neverland here to New Earth Mystery School as our guest teacher. So I'm going to take a break back as you step forward and you can introduce yourself to the class. And we're looking so forward to learning from you today.
Wow, okay, I think I'm here now. So it's nice to be here, and thank you, Miriam, for introducing me. She was actually one of the first people that I very first found on Twitter, and I actually helped really influence me into realizing that there was really a mission that I had to do there. So when she reached out, I was just really excited. I'm glad to be here with all of you. And oh no, I say that you can't see me. Can you see me now? Is everyone? Okay, good. All right. So yes, I think it's back in. All right. So yeah, it's just been amazing in getting here and being here and getting to share this space with her. And yeah, I feel very much in alignment with her work, and just really, it's a joy to be here with all of you. So thank you. Oh, here, you can't hear me. You can't see me. You can't hear me. Uh-oh. How about now? Is this better? If I move it a little closer. Is that better? Better. Okay. Perfect. Just let me know if you can't. I'll try to speak up. I'm kind of talk a little quiet, so I'll be loud. All right. Perfect. So I'm so glad to be here. So excited. My favorite topic really is self-love. I feel like it really is kind of the key to developing any sort of spiritual practice at all. It really is embodying your self-love really is the first step to your spiritual journey. There's just like, that's your foundation, kind of like you're building a house. You know, you spend the longest amount of time building the cement for the basement, and then you don't even see that part when you actually build the house. And that really is what self-love is like. It really is the foundation that you kind of build the rest of your life and spiritual practice upon. And people don't necessarily see that part. They don't see the self-love necessarily, but they feel it and they know it, and they can feel that connection when you have that embodiment of that. So it really is, I think, one of my favorite topics. I'm really excited to be here sharing it with all of you. So and yeah, we'll have questions at the end. So if you I think you can put those in the Q&A, and then at the end we'll answer questions. So perfect. All right. So when I say self-love, we all say this, and it's like, this is definitely becoming like a keyword in our you know, in our world, but it's like, what does that even really mean? What do we mean when we say that? Are we talking like, self-love can so easily be misconstrued as just like, you know, indulgence, you know, like fulfilling our desires, you know, like, oh yeah, well, I like, you know, having nice clothes, I like doing these things, like, and so when I do that, I'm expressing love to myself. But really, that's not the kind of love we're talking about here. We're not talking about how you love a dress, or you love, you know, going outside. You know, that's not the kind of love we're talking about. We're really talking about embodying a sense of divine love. So that's what we're talking about. It's hard in the English language. We really only have one word for love, and so we kind of have to use other words to try and really explain what we're talking about. And so we're talking about really this divine love, embodying a sense of divine love, not just, you know, expressing love, feeling love, not just like emotional love of like, you know, I'm in a relationship and I love you and you love me and we're, you know, we're in love. Yeah, that's beautiful. Of course, we all want that, but that's really not the type of love we're talking about. We're talking about the infinite source of love, this like, you know, this unlimited amount of love that's always available to us. And how do we tap into that? How do we find that? How do we hold on, I hear we're still having trouble with sound. I don't think it goes up any louder. Right, well, I'll try to talk louder. So yeah, how do we really, how do we even do that? How do we even find that? How do we tune into that? How do we hold that? I mean, there's just, especially in this world, there's so many things that just distract us and pull us out of our center. How do we even go about doing this? So first off, recognizing that like there is that emotional sense of love, just that like feeling, you know, somebody says something and you get the butterflies in your heart, you know, there's this kind of love, and that this is very much something that we desire and want. But learning how to then, like Miriam even said at the beginning, turn this back into ourselves, because really what we're doing when we have these conditions on love, when we're trying to get it from somebody else, when we're like saying, okay, I love this person, they come home, they kiss me on the cheek, I feel love for them. That's actually more like a conditional love. It's saying, if you kiss me, then I will love you, then I will feel this feeling. It's saying that there's something that needs to be fulfilled before we can have that loving feeling. It's saying, if I put on makeup, if I look really good, I look at myself in the mirror, I love myself, you know, because I look great and I feel good, right? But that's still conditional love. That's still saying, if I look this certain way, then I will love myself. And this is not really infinite love, because there's always looking for something outside of ourselves that is needed before we can feel that loving feeling. We're always waiting for a condition, waiting for somebody else to do something, waiting for something else to shift externally, waiting to get that job, waiting for whatever. You're always like waiting for something before you can really feel that love. So how do we turn this inward so that we don't have to just wait around trying to get energy from other people all the time, trying to get the love that we need? You know, how do we do this? You know, and it really, first step is just acknowledging that we need love. That's like, I mean, that's so funny to even say it, like, because we know that, we all know that, but then at the same time, we really don't. You know, it was really amazing a long time ago when babies were born prematurely, they would all pass away, even though they were in incubators, should be fine. There should be no reason why they were all passing. You know, it was really confusing. And what they figured out is they weren't getting touch and affection. And as soon as they shifted and started having people go into these premature babies in the incubators and touch them and love them periodically through the day, they all started living. And this shows us we really do need love. It really is like an actual human need. And so often we act like we just don't need it, like we're tough, we're strong, and we don't need it, you know. Like we're trying to be the bigger person or trying to be the stronger person, and we just don't acknowledge that it really is a need. We really do need to feel love and affection. So that's step one, is just acknowledging that you need that, just knowing that, like, it's okay that sometimes you feel lonely. It's okay. Sorry, my cat just came to visit. So it's okay that sometimes we feel lonely and that we don't really want, or that we don't really get those needs fulfilled, that we feel, yep, there she is. So anyway, yep, she needs love too. That's what someone in the chat just said. Anyway, so yeah, first step is just admitting to ourselves, yes, I do need love. I do need love and affection. I'm not above that. I'm not, you know, stronger than that. I'm not too good for that. Like, I don't know why we kind of get into that space. And I think a lot of the time it is just because we grew up, you know, in situations and home environments where we weren't having our love fulfilled. But, you know, so then we just kind of went, oh, well, I just don't need that. Trying to be tough, trying to just get ourselves through life, you know, trying to just work with what we have. And what that creates is like this pattern of thinking that we don't need it, but we do, we really do. And I think that's the first step, is going, you know what? Yeah, I need love and I need affection. So once we do that, it's like, okay, but we don't want to go outside of ourselves for that. We don't want to have to constantly need energy from other people, to constantly feel like, okay, I need this love, so I've got to go and get this from someone. I've got to do what they want, do what they need, so that I can get that feeling that I need, right? That emotion, that energy. And it's like, so we want to shift this inward and learn to fulfill that loving need within ourselves, so that we're not constantly trying to, you know, manipulate, control, like figure out how to get this energy from other people. We really like want to learn how to kind of create that feeling within ourselves, and so that we can really just always be that, like a cup overflowing with love, instead of like that self-sacrificing, depleting yourself, draining, always pouring your cup out for everybody else, giving them, and then you're always empty, right? That's what so many people consider to be love, is that self-sacrifice of just like constantly giving so that you can get that love in return. Instead, we really want to have it be more like filling ourselves up with love, so that we are a cup that overflows. And then everybody around us reaps the benefits. You know, we're just bubbling and overflowing with this beautiful love, and everybody wants to be around that. And you know, and it transforms people. You feel that that love doesn't have a condition. You're not giving it to try and get something. You're not doing stuff for people to try and get love in return. You're just feeling that love overflowing all the time. And then they all just get to have all of that. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's getting returned, because you're already feeling that. And what you'll find is that the people around you will respond in an equally loving way. You know, when you're just overflowing and giving it freely, you know, and maybe not everybody, you know, there's people, you know, using discernment with the people we're around, but at the same time, most people will respond to that overflowing unconditional love and be transformed. And you'll find that it transforms your relationships, and all the people in your life will feel the difference, because it's love without conditions. So that's a big part of it. There's the lower emotions of like, you know, you can have like sadness, and passion is one of those. It would be a lower emotion. Passion would even be the solar plexus. Lower emotions, sadness, anger, all these things are going to be sacral chakra. These are all lower chakra emotions. And so when we're talking about divine love, we're talking about heart chakra. This is actually up higher, right? This is a higher level. It's not actually an emotion, even though we feel it through the emotional body. And so when we bring ourselves up, we are coming into this state of divine love, this like high heart opening, unconditional, overflowing. And it actually does come in through the emotional body. So when we feel that way, once we're embodying that level of love, we actually feel good. We feel bliss and happiness and all of these because it uses that same system, that same emotional body, even though love really is very different. It's actually, and we all know this, it's like, you know, it's just a completely different situation. People will do crazy things in the name of love. You know, it's a very different thing. So, yeah, I think that's a big part of learning to bring our frequency up, you know, getting out of those lower chakra centers, those lower level emotions, you know, of like guilt is so often what we do for love. You know, it's like we feel like, oh, that person will love me if I do this thing and I'm not doing that thing, so I feel bad, right? And that, like, this is often like a love game we play, right? Is this like trying to, or I'll do this thing for you because then you're going to be happy with me. And it's like, that's the control games, you know, and those are all lower chakra centers. When we start bringing it up into our heart center, we start just feeling that like, oh, you know, I'm here, I'm present, everything is good, everything's well. And you start to feel these like well-being in yourself. So this is the goal, is to bring the energy up to the heart center, bringing it up out of those lower centers. Tuning in and hearing your God self is really what this is all about. Exactly as Miriam said, finding the source within yourself, finding that infinite overflowing cup so that you can just be that, because we all want to be that. I mean, really, you're like, okay, Karen, this sounds great. We're going to be this overflowing cup, but like, how do we do that? Like, that's the real trick. Okay, so that's what we're getting into. So first step is really recognizing this conditional love versus unconditional love. Conditional love is always going to be, I love you if. So I love you if you come home and kiss me on the cheek. I love you if you come home and make dinner. I love, you know, it's like, there's always this thing. I love myself if I look good. If I don't have any pimples, then I love myself today, you know? And it's like, this is always the if. There's always a condition on it. And we really want to get into love embodiment. So really feeling love all the time, never losing that, never at any point in the day not having that loving feeling in your heart. And this is possible. This is 100% doable for anybody. So really learning how to do that. So let's see here. Oh yeah, so the first step in this is starting to unconditionally accept ourselves. And this is tricky. This is very tricky. The shadow part of ourself is the part we don't like, the part we don't want to look at, the part we don't want to see. Carl Jung explains that it's, you know, it's the part we actually can't see our shadow. It's not even that we don't want to see it. It's like, it's the part of ourselves we actually almost like check out, or you explain it away, or like, so, you know, it comes out and then you just kind of like, you know, put it out of your mind, or just don't even think about it, or you don't even see that part of yourself. A lot of the times people are very even kind of a dissociative in their shadow. They don't even realize that they're acting a certain way because they're so just checked out. And this is where that kind of you know, we end up doing things we don't mean, we don't want to, acting in ways we don't want to be, and doing, and this is all comes because we're not accepting ourselves. The shadow is the unaccepted part of ourselves. And so in learning this unconditional love, you know, not the I love you if, but the I love you no matter what, learning how to embody that feeling. And this starts with the shadow. This starts with going into our deep, dark parts of ourselves, the parts that's like, wow, I really just lashed out at that person, and like, I didn't mean to, and like, I said all these things, and then you just beat yourself up over it for like the next 3 days or whatever, right? You know, and it's like, so how do we shift, like, you know, this is just an example, like, how do we shift something like that? Like, you know, this part of your shadow comes out, you just let, you know, whatever, you lash into someone, whatever, you know, something happens, and you're just like, wow, that was really like awful, you know, I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why did I act in that way? You know, and this is shadow, right? The part of yourself that you can't see, you can't control, you can't, you know, it just comes out, you know. How do we heal that? How do we face that? How do we turn that into an integrated part of ourselves, that so that we're always able to be present and not acting in these ways that don't really suit our soul and aren't really how we would prefer to be. Well, it comes through self-acceptance. It comes through looking at those parts we don't want to see. So in this example, say you yelled at the person at the checkout stand for some reason, and then you go home and you're like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. I feel awful. And you're going to probably beat yourself up, like I said. So instead, shifting in that moment and being like, why did I say that? Why did I say those things to those person? Like, start asking yourself questions. Don't let yourself get away with it. Being with compassion, though, being gentle, being like, why? But why? I did say that thing that was mean, or I yelled at my boyfriend, or at what? And then going, okay, but I'm going to take a self-reflective moment with it. Why? Why did I do that? Why did I say that? Because there's a reason. You didn't just there's always going to be a reason. You didn't just like say it for no reason. You didn't just get upset. You didn't just get angry for no reason. You didn't just get sad for no reason. You didn't get hurt for no reason. And that first step is accepting that. Accepting like, okay, like what they said really hurt me, or what they said was really upsetting to me. And that's why I responded that way. Having compassion for yourself in that situation and going, okay, like why did I do that? And trying to bring that part of the shadow that came out into your conscious awareness. And that's what the whole way to heal the shadow is, really just bringing your unconscious self into awareness. And sometimes, you're still not going to be able to control your shadow. It's still going to come out, but learning to have that acceptance for yourself when it does, not beating yourself up, not being angry with yourself and just attacking yourself for no reason. Shifting it instead to being a learning experience. Like, okay, yeah, I don't really want to be yelling at people at the checkout stand. That's not really what I want to do. It's not who I want to be, right? So and then going, okay, in the future, what set me off in that situation? Why did I do that? Why did I say that to those people? And get to the bottom of it, like why, what was really the thing that they said that hurt you or was upsetting to you? Get there with it and then go, yeah, that makes sense. I love myself. It's okay. Like, I get why I did that. Like, and giving yourself that permission and that compassion to just be for your shadow is really the whole key. It's just making sure, yeah, you don't want to be that person, but you're definitely not going to get away from being that person if you're just like, nope, that was bad. Like, I'm just not going to look at it. Or if you're like, well, that's fine, justifying it. That's what we usually do. Well, she deserved it, right? Like, that's usually a big part of it, is just like explaining away our behavior as if it's okay. We do that a lot. And so don't let yourself get away with that, but with loving compassion, why did I say that though? Why did I do that? And then having love for yourself and being like, I understand, I went through a lot in my life, maybe your parents didn't teach you healthy emotional balance, maybe, and trying to get to the root of it. Why did I act that way? Okay. And it's not that you're justifying it and saying that you should continue acting that way. No. It's like, it's just like a loving self-correction. It's going, yeah, I acted that way, and that's okay. That's step one. Just accepting that you did that. Don't beat yourself up, Oh, okay, I did that thing. I hurt that person, whatever you did. I did that thing. And I accept that I did that, and I don't feel good. How I feel right now, this awful feeling I feel inside, I don't want to feel this way again. So how do I prevent this in the future? Always make it about making steps in the future. Instead of just like attacking yourself about the past, go, okay, yeah, I feel this way because I did something that was out of alignment with my core self. So how do I prevent that in the future? What can I do to make sure that if that situation happens again, what would I do this time? How would I navigate my way through? And then if the situation comes up again, you've already thought about it, and you'll take the steps you thought about. And this will help you correct in the future. And this is a loving correction, right? Versus like, oh, I hate myself. I can't believe I did this. Like, I'm the worst. It's like we just get in these self-feeding cycles of just self-abuse, really, where you're just like attacking yourself over the past. And that does nothing to help you going forward. That does nothing to help you make the change for the future. It just hurts you. It's just self-abuse and self-attack. And that's not creating that loving feeling inside. That's only like and we so many times we're walking around with just this festering feeling inside, that we're just like, so we don't even know how to get rid of it. And it really is, it becomes like a demon or a monkey on your back, right? Just like whispering in your ear all the time, all the ways that you're screwing up, all the ways that you've messed up in the past. So instead, trying to shift it like, okay, yeah, that was a mistake. that isn't how I'd like to act. That isn't what I'd like to do. So going forward, I'll try to make efforts to do this in that situation. And you may be able to do it the next time, but you may still do it, you may still, chew out the checkout person again. It may still come up again, and still same self-correction. That's okay. It's not how I'd like to act. I love myself. In the future, I'll try to do this, and just like making it more about forward momentum, working with your shadow, not just trying to pretend it's not there and like, block it out, justify your behavior. No, like really look at it and really ask yourself those difficult questions. And that will help kind of heal that. And it takes time, it's not like you're healing the shadow isn't like a one and you're done kind of situation. It usually takes, especially patterns that we've really put, years into creating. Sometimes they can take some time to undo. And that's, again, why it's so important to have that loving correction, that loving compassion for yourself, learning to embody that. Then you're going to find that once you're able to do that for yourself, it's so easy to do that for other people, because you hear all of your inner monologue, all the nasty thoughts that like you don't normally tell anybody, you hear all of that stuff. And that's like kind of gives us a false perspective of ourselves, because we hear everything going on in our minds and nobody else hears that, and we don't hear what's going on really well. You can pick it up, of course, in like telepathy and things, but generally speaking, we don't just like hear what everybody else is thinking. And this is a big part of why we have an inaccurate view of ourselves, because we're comparing what's going on inside of ourselves to what's going on outside with everybody else. And this is not fair. It's not a fair assessment of the self. So learning to love yourself, learning to shift into this loving compassion will then also make you more patient with other people. You've learned to kind of deal with your own inner demons. Then when other people's inner demons come out, you're like, oh, I know this demon. I have this one too. I know how to handle this, because you've been working with it. So it'll make you more patient, more compassionate, just naturally embodying this in yourself. And then this is going to start drawing loving relationships into your life. People whereas before, if you're doing conditional love, trying to manipulate and control to get the love that you need, you're always feeling empty in love and you're trying to get love, playing games to try and get the love you need, right? Well, now it's like you've got this embodiment of love. And you're working with with yourself, you're healing this part of yourself, and this gives you patience, compassion, and these are the kind of people who start showing up in your life. People who equally feel that same resonance, that same feeling of compassion. So you'll start to draw people into your life that have that same level of loving compassion that you're showing to yourself. So really key on that. How are we doing? How's everyone doing? Everyone looks good. The chat looks good so far. So one of my key mantras that's like, it's like an ego killer, really. It's like anytime the ego is stuck in one of those thought loops, it's just going off. It's just like, I screwed up. I did it. I did all these things, whatever. I'm the worst. All these things that we tell ourselves, just like stop it and go, I hear you. Like I totally get what you're saying. Don't invalidate yourself. A lot of times we're like, don't think that. Don't do that. That's not, that's just going to put it in the shadow. As soon as you're saying don't do something, don't be something, that tucks it away in the part of yourself you can't see, because it's not going away. You're not going to change that part of yourself by denying it. And so learning to first accept it. So listen to your thoughts in your head going, okay, my ego's going off about all this stuff. It's really being mean today. It's really being a bully, like, okay, I hear you, and just acknowledge it. Just like, I hear what you're saying, hear you, mind, I hear what you're saying. Like all that stuff, you're probably right. I probably am the worst. That's fine. Whatever, like that's fine that you say that. But I know it's not true. I love and accept myself. And that's like the 2-step part. I hear what you're saying, but I love and accept myself. And this is transmutation in its simplest way. It's literally taking something that goes from one thought of I hate myself to I love myself. I hear what you're saying, but I love myself. And this instantly puts us in our heart. Yes, it instantly, someone just said chills. It's so beautiful. I got that too. I love it. It really does. It's really shifting into I'm in this place. Don't deny it. Yes, I'm feeling awful. I'm having the worst day of my life. Everything's going wrong. Everybody's being mean. I've been mean. Everything's exploding. It's just one of those days. And you go, yeah, that is. It's the worst day. But I still love and accept myself despite all of that. You know? And that is such a, that will, I mean, I've been using that for 10 plus years, and I can tell you it never gets less profound in that moment when you're really torn up and you really have a hard time and shifting it and going, yeah, but I love myself anyway. And it really, it is quite chilling. It's pretty powerful. So reprogramming the ego is a big part of so much of self-love, because like Miriam said at the beginning, we are love. We like, that's what we are. We just are this overflowing infinite source of love all the time. And so it really is that we stop ourselves from being able to experience that. And usually it's through self-attack, self-abuse, the mind, uncontrolled mind, you know, this monkey mind, just like all day long, you know, and it's like, it's got its own agendas, its own programs, its own things going on. And we're just like along for the ride, you know, it's like, we're just trying to get through the day with what our ego is saying, you know. And so shifting back into the heart, yes, I hear you, mind, but I love myself. And reprogramming the ego, that's what you're doing. Every time you say that, every time you go from a thought that says, you know, where you're hating yourself or you're hating the situation or you're hating your life, and you shift it to, yeah, but I get, this is where I'm at. I accept it. I love myself. It's a program. The mind can be programmed just like a computer, and you do that with affirmations. Sounds like you guys did that last week, so that's perfect. Affirmations are so good. Just to reprogram the dialogue in the mind. And it really is just like mantras. That's what they're about. They're about kind of breaking those circuits, those thought loops we get stuck in, but just like putting in a steady affirmation, you know, something that feels good, you know. And you don't even have to say that I love and accept myself is the one I love, but you know, find the one that works for you. Find the thing that you can feel it in your heart every time you say it, you know, the thing that when you can, every time you say, it pulls, you feel it here, you know, feeling it here, not here, you know. You want to feel that love here and actually feel it, not just like think love, not just want love, not just feel fulfilled, but actually feel that bubbling, overflowing. So when you're in a good space and you're having a good day, try to find that. What is your mantra? What is your, you know, affirmation that helps you break those thought loops? Someone just wrote, mine is everything is perfect. Yes, I love that one for sure. I like all is well is a good one. Is, you know, just like, you know what, don't be afraid. Everything's perfect, you know, everything exactly, you know. Find, when you're in a good space, finding that thought that you can say to yourself that breaks those thought loops. Don't let your mind be a bully. The mind can be such a bully. It'll just like, you know, start pushing you around and tell you what to do, and you like just you can't do anything. You're just like, you know. So how do you pull it back down into the heart? Always pulling it back. So that's a big part of it. Another thing that really helps with that is mirror work. And this has been like I think where my journey started really even would be with mirror work. So what this is getting a mirror and just looking yourself in the eyes. That's it. That's all you're gonna do. You don't have to say anything, just connect. But this is what, you're not looking at yourself. This is the difference. Is usually when we look in the mirror, we're looking at ourselves. I'm looking at my nose, I'm looking at my ears or my pimples or, you know, the little extra pudge, you know, whatever, you know. It's like I'm looking at all these things going on with myself. And that's completely different than what I'm talking about. I'm talking about looking yourself in the eyes and just looking. No agenda, no thoughts, trying to just clear and just look at yourself. And you'll find that suddenly there's another presence there. There's somebody else there besides just you, and it's your greater God self that you are able to literally see in your own eyes. And it just takes, at first, you're not able to. At first, you're just like, okay, I'm just looking at my eyes. This is weird. You know, Karen said to do this. This is weird. You know, it's like, that's what you get. But like, just trust it. Just sit there and just stare and just watch. And you can talk, you know, after a minute or two, start talking to yourself, whatever comes to mind, you know, whatever, just try to feel it, you know, really feel in your heart, like how are you doing today? You know, check in with yourself. How are you doing? How's your day going? What'd you do today? You know, and just start talking to yourself as if you're your best friend, looking right at yourself in the eyes. And this will teach you how to have loving compassion for yourself so that you really feel that connection. You really are giving yourself loving attention. And this is important because, as we said in the beginning, with the babies, we need loving attention. And as an adult, as a God being, you can learn how to do that and fulfill yourself. You can learn how to fill that cup up yourself. You know, you don't you do need that loving attention. You do need that loving compassion, and you need it every day. And you're not going to get it every day from everybody else. You're just not, but you need it every day. And so the way to do that is to give it to yourself. And mirror work is great because it almost puts you separate. You feel connected, but you almost feel like there's another person in the room with you, and you can get that loving. And this also teaches how to connect and how to, how to have that loving connection, how to really feel what's going on inside yourself, how to really. So as you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you're not just looking, but also tuning into your heart, also trying to feel as you're looking, and you'll find that God presence does show up, and you're able to see it. And as soon as you see that spark in your eyes, you're gonna, and it, like, both ways, you're gonna feel it in your heart and you're gonna see it in your eyes, and it's gonna form this beautiful connection. And once you start feeling that loving God self within that infinite being, once you're able to feel that, you're not going to need the mirror anymore, right? That can kind of go away at some point, and then you're able to just carry that presence with you all the time, and that's the goal. So that's the entire goal of this whole thing, is to be able to embody that God self, that infinite love, all the time. It starts with just spending the time with yourself. You can't have a relationship with someone you never spend time with, and some people never spend time with themselves. And it's, of course, they don't have a relationship, and so this helps you just start that relationship with yourself, to start having that checking in with yourself daily. Sometimes nobody asks you how you did that day, but at least if you asked yourself, like, you can still have that, and you'll find that there's, like I said, that other presence there that's infinite, and you're able to really tune in. So I'd encourage you to try that. Just go, I did that every day, probably just 5 minutes a day every morning, brushing your teeth. You can even just, just check in, check it out, like, talk to yourself, ask yourself how you're doing, don't just assume you're doing well, ask yourself, like, and really, you'll find that when you're looking yourself in the eyes, you can't lie to yourself. You won't be able to say that you're not upset about something you're upset about when you're looking yourself right in the eyes. It's like you're gonna, if you're lying, and I often cry. I think it almost every time I do mirror work, I cry. It just, like, you feel that infinite love flowing out of your own self, and know that it's always there, and you don't need anyone else to give that to you. And so I think that that's a really key part of learning that loving compassion for the self, and also connecting to your God being. I think is a very important part. All right, how's everybody? We're doing good. People are in the chat. Looks like everybody's doing good. Beautiful. Yes, amazing. Good. Okay. All right. So learning to honor ourselves, learning how to respect our shadow. And it's not that we want to have a shadow or glorify the shadow, or say that it's like, oh yeah, my shadow is just, it's like, it's part of me, and and it's great. It's like, yeah, we do want to work with the shadow. We do want to start healing the shadow. But we definitely are not going to get there by just pretending it's not there. Like, we definitely have to, like, engage it and start to make it aware, become aware of it, and honor it, and honor its place in our lives, because there's a reason for it. The shadow was created for a reason. There's a reason that it's a part of us, just like the ego. There's a reason we have an ego. It serves a function. We just don't want it to get so out of hand that we are just, it's manipulating and controlling us, and we can't tune into ourselves. It's pulling us off our center all the time. So what you'll find also in embodying this sense of self-love and learning to really turn all of this affection and love inward, is that the shadow starts to become a healthy part of our awareness. We start to integrate it and become aware of it, and start to be able to use the power that's there, because there's so much power in the shadow. Just think of yourself last time you were really angry. There's so much ferocity and energy in the shadow. It's got power, and we want to have that, but we don't want to use it in ways that really hurt people, or that really yelling at people. Not what we want to be doing. That's not the way we want to use that power. We want to be able to be aware of it, so that we can use that energy, and not have it fighting against ourselves and self-attack, not having it attacking everybody else. We want it to be able to just integrate, so we're aware of it. And then you can become more conscious as you go through this process of becoming aware of the shadow. You start to coming to a point that you're able to actually catch yourself. You're, like, about to trigger. You're about to, like, lay into somebody, or I don't even know. It's just, whatever things we do, there's all sorts of shadow-like behavior, secrecy, anything, all these things that we do that we're not proud of, right? That would be what would be shadow. And so we want to like start becoming aware of that, so that then you'll find eventually, after you've been working with this for a while, you'll be about to trigger and you'll go, you know what? Maybe I'll just skip that, and you'll find that that's like, you just kind of have a moment with yourself where you're like, I think I love myself too much to really engage this situation further, and you'll just leave, because there's nothing there tying you there anymore, because you have that sense of self and awareness that you're able to tune in. So definitely a lifelong practice. This isn't something that you just master, it's like, it definitely is, the shadow's never going away. So it's time to start working with it. It's time to start being aware of it, start loving it, and offering it the compassion it needs. Really, the shadow is just a child acting out. That's really it. It wants, it's a part of ourselves that we forgot or neglected. And so it becomes this really, it starts to get worse and worse and worse and worse until we have to pay attention to it. So it has to get expressed. This is a part of ourselves that we can't get rid of. And we have to, the more we can start tuning in, being aware of it, you'll start to uncover layers and be like, wow, I actually did that because I didn't get enough love as a child, and you'll start to actually take these things that are like in the present moment that seem like they're like, why did I act that way? You'll start to trace it back and find the reasons, because you're becoming aware of it. And this allows us all to kind of shift into a more conscious state, where you start to heal the shadow and all of these like adverse sides of it that come out, because we're allowing it to express itself. We're going, yes, like I did do that thing that I'm not proud of. I did act in a way that I'm not proud of, but I love myself and I'm doing the best I can. And I went through a lot as a kid. We all did. We all grew up in a really dark world. We all have these really dark shadows. And of course, we're not proud of them, and but hiding, we don't want to hide them anymore. We want to bring them up, start bringing them up, start healing them, giving them space to express themselves. And sometimes, being patient with each other's triggers too, because as we're all going through this process, we're all learning how to become more conscious of our triggers and our shadows. And sometimes people's shadows come out, and there's a big difference between sometimes somebody's shadows coming out and every time you see a person, they're in their shadow. So definitely making that discernment of people who are in your life, there's definitely a big difference between having the people that you love and they trigger in their shadow and you need to be patient and loving and help them through that, and the people that are just abusive and just throwing their shadow at you all the time. That's big difference. So definitely making that discernment about the people in your life, and that can be hard sometimes. As we embody self-love, it is inevitable that we do end up having some people leave our lives. That's just sometimes, as we start treating ourselves with love and respect, we start to, and treating other people with love and respect, we start to really, there's like a zero tolerance for not getting that in return. And so that's what we find is like, you start being like, well, I love myself and I don't like how that person treats me, so I'm just not going to spend time with them. And I mean, that is inevitable. There is, of course, the difference, like I said, between the people who are really loving, who you really do love and are just going through a dark period. And making that discernment is important too, because we don't want to just, this is a big issue in like the new age movement, is many people focus so much on love and light, and then as soon as somebody is in their shadow or having a hard time, everybody abandons them because they're like, oh, I don't want that vibe, like I don't want that, and it's like, that's not really like love, for the people in our lives. Like, we don't just want to kick people out just because they're in their shadow or just because they're having a hard time in their life. So I think that that's a big part of it, is learning, if somebody's just in a bad place, or if they're, because if they're, if they're your friend, you want to be there in their dark night. And then this learning, this loving compassion, embodying this feeling makes us much more able to show up for those people when they need us too, because we're no longer need anything from them. We're embodying love. And so then if they need from us, we're able to overflow and give it to them. Now, this is definitely, you definitely want to be mindful of the people who are always hucking their shadow at you and never giving love in return. That's definitely being, having that loving compassion. You're going to be able to know the difference, because now you're no longer needing an external source of love. You have that love. So you're able to discern whether people are in, what that relationship really means to you. And if it's really somebody that you want in your life, because you don't need anything from them. You don't need anything from anybody. You know, it's great when you get that love and affection from people. Of course, we all want that. We all love that, but you're no longer requiring it from people or trying to suck it out of people or get it, you know, or play games or control. You're like, well, I'm good. Maybe I don't want that person in my life, you know, or it can be like, well, I'm good. I can be there for this person right now because I feel good. And I think that's the difference between self-sacrifice and self-love is if you feel really good, if you're having a really big bubbly day, you're feeling really good and somebody's in their shadow and you can handle it, like sometimes that is the right thing to do. Sometimes you can just be that loving support for people. But sometimes it's not right. You know, if you're tuned into yourself, you checked in with yourself in the morning, you did your mirror work and you know you're just having a bad day and your mind is like really beating you up, you don't need to be there for the other people that day. You know, you don't need to, like, because you're working on filling your cup that day. That day, today, I'm just filling my own cup because I'm empty. You know, like that's what learning when you're there. Yeah, yeah. Someone just wrote boundaries. Absolutely, yeah. Learning when you are depleted and need to work on filling your own cup, and not learn how to remove yourself from those situations in a loving way. Like, you know what, I just can't today, and that's okay. You know, that person, you know, tomorrow if I'm feeling better, I'll call them, you know, and hit them up and try to be there for them through their, you know, darkness, and not just abandoning people. I think a lot of times in self-love, people act like you should just kick those people out of your life, and sometimes that is true. Sometimes you're like, that person's kind of just draining me all the time and never really, you know, and you'll know the difference because you'll be tuned into yourself and knowing, you know, what that relationship really means. You don't need the relationship. You can decide whether or not it's right. So I'm not sure how long I can go, or how long. I think 10 minutes. Should we do questions? How's everyone doing?
You can go as long as you like.
Okay, I can keep going then. I think I was gonna say I have some more, so I'll go.
Yeah, definitely. Let's continue on. Someone said keep going forever. Um, you all can start to put questions in the Q&A now as she continues. And then I know that I'll have a question too, but you'll let me know when you're ready to do questions and we'll jump into that. So perfect.
Sounds good. Okay, perfect. So a couple more things I wanted to talk about now that we've talked about that part. I think learning authenticity is really key to learning self-love. What we mean when I say authenticity, I'm talking about learning to resonate at your core self. So if you think of like music, like you if you strike a note, it's like it has this resonance. It makes a frequency that kind of ripples out and plays, right? And the idea is if all of us are in our, you know, we're all in tune, we're all toned, and we're in this right frequency of ourself, then when you play all the chords of humanity, we're all in tune, we're all playing this beautiful chord together. But when you're out of tune, when you're not acting as your core self, when you're, you know, letting people pull you off your center, you know, when you're having your shadow come out, having your ego come out, all these things that aren't really you, you know, it's like when we do that, it's like we're a note that's out of tune. And so then you're playing this chord and it's like, ooh, that's awful. You know, it's like we're playing this human chord right now. We're playing this like human chord on the planet and we're going, this is not good. Like, you know, this is not a good chord, you know, in a lot of ways it's very out of tune, right? But really it's not a matter of fixing humanity. It really is a matter of tuning ourselves so that we all play in harmony with each other. And we do this by embodying that authenticity of self, trying to be your pure core self, not your ego self, not your shadow self, you know, not the wounded self, not your wounded child, you know, all these different archetypes that come out. These are all just because we haven't learned to tune in and love and heal ourselves. As soon as we can kind of start shifting that love and affection inward, we start to play a really clear tone of our own frequency, and then we all can start to come into this tuning together. And so it really does start with the self and learning how to, you know, come back into tune with each other. I think that that's a big part of it, rather than trying to fix other people. Another thing that's really interesting is when you play like an E chord on a guitar, if there's another guitar in the room, the E will also vibrate. And so this is, I mean, frequency impacts each other. We influence each other by our frequency. So if you really want to help the world, learning to get yourself in tune is really, then every single person you come in contact with, you're tuning them as well and bringing them into harmony. So it's really about tuning yourself to your core self frequency. And we do this by getting rid of all of the banter in the mind, all of this stuff, all the self abuse, all the self hate, all these guilt, blame, shame, all these lower chakra emotions, and pulling it up into the heart, bringing it into this self love, holding that frequency, and not letting anything outside of yourself be the condition that pulls you out of that. I only love myself if I have a smoothie and do yoga and, even all the things that are good, right? It's like, even like, but that's still a condition. It's still requiring that you do something, that you have something, that you be something specific before you can have love. Learning to love yourself on the worst days is really what it's all about. It's like the days you wake up and your hair is a mess and you have to go to work, you're pulling a double shift, you come home, you're exhausted, everybody was mean to you all day, and still loving yourself. That's the days when you're really doing the shadow work. That's the day you're really doing the core work. And those are the days you can really make the shifts, not being like, yeah, all I want to do is just, beat myself up and just be, but instead I'm going to like go look at myself in the mirror. What happened today? Today was a bad shift. What happened? How come it was so bad? How could I have done anything different? Starting to make those shifts and not letting your self just stay in those lower energy centers, pulling it up into your authentic self, holding that frequency, and then, and it's hard at first. It is hard. It's a practice. It's not something that just like immediately you're just going to be able to hold that cord. People are going to pull you off your center. They're going to come in, someone's going to come and yell at you and you're going to get triggered and you're going to be upset, or whatever, and it's like, this is going to happen, and having patience for yourself, being like, yep, I really blew it. and that's okay. I really did. And it's fine. And next time I'm going to try and do better, and that's it. And sometimes that's all you have. Sometimes that's the best you have, and that's okay too. But those are the days when you're doing the shadow work, those days when things aren't ideal, when when the job is awful, when money is tight, all this stuff. But those are the days when you're really doing the core work. And if you can hold your core love frequency, if you can find that love in those moments, you can find them at any time. You can find them when, no matter where you are, the bookstore, the grocery store, always holding that feeling inside. So that's really kind of when we say standing in your power, that's what we're talking about, is finding that resonance in your heart, and just embodying that no matter where you are, and doing the shadow work. Mix it so that on the good days, if you can love yourself on the day when everything goes wrong, you can love yourself on the day when you do get all the things, your smoothie, your yoga, your meditation, you get everything that you love doing, and those days are easy to love yourself. Of course you do, because you're doing all the things you love and you're feeling good and you're in your flow, but that's easy. Loving yourself on your bad days is hard, and that's really where the work needs to be done. So yeah, that's what finding authenticity is finding that part of yourself that never goes away. And I really think mirror work is really key to finding that. And then you'll be able to translate that into your everyday life constantly. The goal, of course, the end goal, of course, we're all working on getting there. The end goal is to always be holding that love self, that God self, that love part of our being, trying to always be authentic. So that when I say authenticity, that's why that's so key. The main thing that throws something in the shadow, that makes something become a shadow, is when we lie about it. When we say, like, oh, I didn't do that. That means that what you're actually doing in yourself is saying that part of me is not acceptable. Like, oh, I did that thing, but I don't want to talk about it. I don't want anyone to know about it. I don't want to, we'll just stash it away and not look at it, right? Those are the things that become shadow material. So the very first thing that's needed to kind of embody this core self is to start being, honest, authentic, telling, really not letting yourself cover up and gloss over your bad behavior, loving yourself through it. Like, yep, that's not how I like to be, but that's how I am. So, and just love that, it's not, love doesn't mean that you're saying it's acceptable, that you want that behavior to continue. It's just saying, I'm acknowledging that part of myself needs love. And you definitely, that's how you heal the shadow, is sending love to those parts that are really awful, ugly, brutal, just the parts that we don't want to look at, and sending love to those places. That's where the healing work needs to be done. And that's where that authenticity, being honest, yeah, I did that thing I'm not proud of, and I'm just gonna admit it. And yeah, and just be, that's gonna bring things out of the shadow. It's going to start pulling that stuff that you haven't been looking at out, so you can look at it, integrate it, start being more aware of yourself. And this is going to give you access to all your power. You know, instead of wasting the energy yelling at the checkout person, now I can put that energy into painting or something. You know, it's like you can, that same energy that you were wasting from the shadow and the ego, you can then use it for something else. And this is why integrating the shadow gives us access to our power, because until we integrate the shadow, all that power is being channeled into yelling, anger, you know, brooding, you know, all these things, all these emotions. We're putting so much energy into self-attack. And until we can integrate the shadow, it's not possible to really use that power, because it's like a leak. It's just funneling out all the time. So that's a big part of stepping into our power, is being honest with ourselves and our flaws, where we're proud of and what we're not proud of, and you tell people, you know, like your friends. You don't have to just tell everybody, you know, but like your friends, just be like, I had this amazing shadow integration. I realized that I wasn't loved enough as a child, and I really laid into this person, you know, and it was like, and just tell people. And this will also really help integrate the shadow, because it takes it out of shame. You know, we are so ashamed of our shadows. We're so like, oh, I can't believe I did that. You know, like there's so much there, and that's all energy that's being wasted on just attacking ourselves. So, you know, tell people, be honest, be open, and you'll find that other people are like, oh my gosh, I totally do that too, you know. And it's like, it kind of brings us all together. And there's nothing that defeats the shadow more than just it deflates it. It's like popping the balloon. As soon as you tell somebody what's going on in your shadow, what you saw there, what you experienced there, what you're struggling with, it's like it pops the balloon. Your shadow's just like, oh, that's conscious now. So so it really, like, it's hard work to do, but it is really important. And I think until you do that, you know, you're just basically walking around fighting against yourself and running away from all your trauma. So I think that's a big part, is going into those shadow parts and loving them, especially the parts we feel are not worthy of love, you know, the parts of ourselves that we are ashamed of, that we don't want to talk about, that we you know, stuff that happened in the past that we've never told anybody, or that we you know, that all is shadow material. And until it starts to become a conscious part of ourselves, it's really just an anchor weighing us down and preventing us from moving forward. So I love that. So last thing before we get to questions, there's so we talk about self-care and self-love, and I mentioned earlier we don't want to have a condition on self-love, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do self-care. That's like, yeah, obviously we all need self-care. Self-care, when I say that, it's mind, body, spirit. Oftentimes when we're trying to heal, we're only facing one of those. We're looking at the body and trying to do the nutrition, or we're meditating, or we're doing our effort, you know, but we're not doing all three. So if you really want to heal, make sure you're hitting all three, at least two of those areas: mind, body, and spirit. So, you know, it is about getting, self-love is about getting healthy nutrition, you know, making sure that you feel good, that you can feel that love in your heart. Because if you haven't eaten, or, you know, and you're eating garbage, or you ate a bunch of sugar, or, you know, it's like, and you're just all, you're not going to be able to feel that loving feeling, because your body doesn't feel good. So that's a big part of it. Is a big part of self-love is taking care of the body and showing the body love. Exactly, like, think of those infants in the incubators, you know, showing your body love. Your body's a physical, you know, a living creature, and it needs touch. And so many people now are starved for touch. And it's like, you can get 100% of that yourself. You really, like, it's different. It's obviously not the same as getting that loving affection from somebody, but you absolutely can, you know, comb your hair slowly, you know, go through it. When you wash yourself in the shower, you know, really feel your skin, you know, really gently, you know, like, you know, really tune into your body and give it love, you know, give it, like, give your physical body love, give it the nutrition it needs. It's a big, I mean, that's definitely a big part of it. Meditation, really big part of it. That's, I mean, I would consider meditating at least 5 minutes a day essential to self-love. I say 5 minutes a day because anybody can do that. And I think it's important to do it every single day. And so I'm going to have a brief, like, meditation just exercise here. I'll tell you in a sec, but I think that's really important. You know, showing up for yourself every day with a devotional practice is self-love, you know, action, love through action, not just saying that you love yourself, but showing yourself, being like, I want to go to bed. I just worked a double shift and I'm exhausted. Like, how, you know, I don't want to meditate right now. I just want to go to bed. And it's like, okay, no, before I go to bed, I'm just going to sit for 5 minutes by myself in the darkness. And I'm just going to sit there, and I'm just going to be quiet. And, like, that's enough some days. That's meditation. That's becoming aware of yourself, removing the external distractions, coming into yourself, letting yourself, and and some days that 5 minutes is gonna 20 minutes. It'll turn into an hour, it'll turn into more, but just making sure. I only say 5 because it's so easy to tell when the ego mind's going off on all its things why you can't meditate today. You're like, you know what, ego, I'm gonna spend 5 minutes. It's like it just cuts it out. It can't make any more excuses. It's like you're like, well, I really can't argue with spending 5 minutes of loving affection on myself, and like really giving myself that time. And yeah, it's gonna stretch out, the longer you do, but I think at least 5 minutes is crucial to getting that time, showing up for yourself for that 5 minutes a day, and making sure that like you did all these other things for everybody else all day, busy, and it was exhausting, and you come home, at least give yourself 5 minutes before you go to bed, and like carry all that into your dream space. Give yourself that 5 minutes to just feel your breathing, connect with yourself. So loving yourself through action and creating a devotional practice, something that you do every single day, and it doesn't, a lot of times we create these huge routines, or like, I have to do all these things, and it's like, that's trying to that's trying to manipulate ourselves. Some days you don't have that. Some days you just like, you are exhausted or you are busy, so making sure that your devotional practices are realistic things that you can do every single day. So yeah, I like the 5 minutes because I think no matter how busy the day is, you can say that, and it usually will turn into longer than that once you get in that space. So I think that learning that devotion for self is really, everybody wants devotion in their relationships, but people don't even know what devotion even means or how to practice that. And devotion is showing up every single day for yourself, every single day. You don't ever, no matter what, and make it simple enough that you can do that you're not gonna, you're not draining yourself trying to force it, trying to fit that in. You want to have practices that you can do even on, like, think of yourself, like, even on my most tired day, could I do this practice? And if, and that's going to be how you can help find realistic goals for your devotional practices for yourself, and making sure you're showing up for yourself in your life. And that's the really big part is if we want devotion from other people, we've got to learn that for ourselves, and showing up. So learning to celebrate the self is definitely a big part of self-love. Absolutely no discount or no judgment on that. Of course, getting dressed up, putting on makeup, whatever you want to do, feeling good about yourself, that's great too. That is such a beautiful part of, yeah, absolutely. Celebrating yourself, loving the skin you're in. That's a big part of it. We are in a human body, we're in a physical vessel. So we have to take care of it and learn that. So yeah, those are a big part of it, but just realizing that's not really what self-love, that's all just to help us kind of find that part of ourself. Those are practices and things that can help you find that feeling of love inside. And then the goal is, of course, to just have that all the time regardless. So those practices and things can all, dressing up, anything like that can all be really good for helping just boost the confidence, make you feel a little better, anything like that, to really help bring up the frequency into your heart. If you're having a really bad day, yeah, treat yourself, go do something fun, try to get the frequency up. When your cup is empty, your goal is just filling up your own cup. That's it. And so whatever you have to do that, whatever feels good for you, that's a big part of it. So last thing here, just like that I've been talking about with meditation on the self. So Miriam's probably going to do one. I just wanted to do one as well real quick. So this is really, really simple. And when I say 5 minutes a day, like this, anybody can do this. And you just want to sit. I usually turn off the lights and just try to, you can even sit on the couch, wherever you want, just floor, whatever, you can lay down. Sit and just sit for a second and start to just feel your breath. Not any exercise, not any tactic, just feeling your lungs fill in. And each breath is different. Just ask and keep asking yourself that. What does this breath want? What is this breath trying to express? Is this breath a big breath? Is this breath a small breath? What is this breath? And just try to keep feeling your breath. And some breaths you're going to go, and some breaths you're just going to go. But just feel, what do my lungs want? what am I doing? Okay, what feels good? What makes my, and feel the energy moving in your lungs. Feel the air filling them up. And then, what's going to happen when you get this, you're starting to tune into your breath, starting to feel this, then the mind's going to start going, really fixating on it. Oh, that breath was too big. Oh, I should breathe bigger. Or then it's even going to go off on like, oh, I've got to do all this stuff today. Or I've got, it's like, it's going to start wandering. And each time, just bringing it back, what does this breath want? How do I do this one? So you're just going to be sitting 5 minutes, focusing 100% on your breath, and that's it. And that's the goal. The mind's going to wander, and you just keep bringing it back. Like a baby, right? It's like wandering, it crawls away, and you just pick it up, put it back, right? That's how we treat the mind. We don't want to be cruel to the mind. Cruelty only creates more cruelty. So when the mind starts to wander away, if you try to go, don't think that, go back to the breath, if you're like really, it's like you've already broken your trance, right? You want to like, okay, come back, breath, and just try to keep bringing it back gently. Gentle correction is always the way. Loving, compassion, these things for the self. That's going to really, if you do this like 5 minutes before you go out the door to work in the morning, I promise your whole day is going to be different. It's going to shift. Your whole frequency was brought up, it's brought up to the heart. So everything you manifest that day is going to be on a higher timeline. It's all going to be higher than if you start the day off like, oh, I've got all this stuff I got to do, like that's what the energy you're sitting in through the whole day. You even spend 5 minutes in the morning anchoring into yourself, getting in tune with yourself, tuning your frequency, getting to the right note, making sure you're in tune. Yes, you're still going to have people come in your life that are not, there's still going to be people, but you'll find that it really does if you do this every single day, it will shift your whole timeline into a higher frequency. So it's definitely simple, it's a simple thing anyone can do, and it makes a world of difference. So. All right, I'm going to open it up for questions. Let's see, there's a few in here already. Oh, and I think Miriam wanted to start. So, yeah, if you guys
Yay. Have awesome. So amazing. So many beautiful, refreshing, clarifying feelings and energy that you shared with us. One of the questions that I wanted to propose is, okay, so in this conversation around self-love and when you're embodying self-love and when you're practicing self-love and self-care, and, we know it's all a journey, and I'm just playing devil's advocate with this question. We realize it's all a journey. Do we ever get to a point where we are just, I love that you talked about, finding your core frequency. Anyone that's worked with me privately knows that I teach about the home frequency and about mastering your home frequency. And when you have like really started to like be able to kind of consistently be tuned into that home frequency, do you feel we ever get to a place where we're just in such a high frequency that we don't encounter other challenging experiences with people who are throwing negativity and projections and cruelty and attack at us? Do we ever get to that place where we're just like, I'm just vibrating so high that I don't have those kind of encounters anymore? Do we ever sort of, is that a goal? Is that a thing that can happen? Or is that even a goal we should be trying to reach for? Is part one of that question. And part two of that question is, when you are on that journey of self-love and embodying the true self, and you are just having a great day where you're like, yes, I'm loving myself and I'm feeling good. And then you have that interaction with someone who is, meeting you in their shadow. Like, what can you do in the moment? What are some things that you would offer that we can do in that moment?
Okay, so yeah, definitely. I think, it's like moths to the flame, right? The brighter your light goes, you're going to have all these creatures of the night coming in. It's always, that's just true. The brighter you shine, you're going to have people. Your reality is not always an exact reflection. Your personal interactions and how you act and what that creates in your life, absolutely, that's all going to be a reflection of you. But there are going to be people who are your opposite who come in, and so yeah, the higher you vibrate, there's just going to be people who come in who, you know, they're just trying to, you know, yeah, they're just trying to flock like these moths to the flame. So I don't know, in this world, you know, until there's always going to be that time where there's, you know, there's always going to be people that we have to interact with. But what we find when you really anchor in that, like you call it a home frequency, it affects you less and less, because really the reason why people are triggering us is it's our own unresolved trauma. A lot of the time is like there's something that they mirror in us, or there's something that they're bringing up that happened to us, or we are projecting something that happened in the past onto the situation. And that's actually what we're triggering or getting upset or brought down by, is our own unintegrated shadow. Is actually their shadows triggering our unintegrated shadow as well. And so that's really what's coming up there. So we don't ever get to the place where just everybody, like, I mean, that's the world we live in. There's just people who don't have pure intentions, you know, which is why discernment is so important, to just recognize when a person is really not, you know, maybe in our highest good, versus people who are just having a bad day, because that's a big difference. There's always going to be people having a bad day coming into your reality, you know, and having to face that. But when you've kind of embodied that home frequency, as you call it, that like that loving core self frequency, eventually people really stop triggering it. It really, like, you'll find that people can come in and they're all, you know, stewing or, you know, really just bent out of shape about something, and you're just gonna be like, I think I'll leave, you know, and that's it, you know. And like there's no trigger, there's no anything. You're just like, this isn't really what I want to do, I'm going to leave, you know. And you'll find that the situations kind of diffuse themselves eventually. So I don't know that they ever fully go away, but you definitely get more patient in learning to deal with your own shadow, learning how to heal it. You become more patient with other people's shadows, and you know how to deal with them. You're like, oh, I've seen this one. Like, I know how to do this. I've been there too. You know, I've been in this person's exact position before, and I had a same, you know, I felt the same way in their position, having that compassion, but then also lovingly detaching from the people that you know are not serving your highest good, and you're able to do that because you have that frequency and you don't need anything from them. So I think that's it. You're never having the expectation that you're never gonna come in contact with people like that. I mean, I haven't had that experience, no matter how loving. I mean, we even see that, like, you know, on social media, no matter how loving you're going to get haters, you know.
That's why I wanted you to talk about that, because I think that what can happen sometimes is that people think like, okay, cool, I'm going to do this, I'm going to love myself, and then I'm never going to have to have, you know, challenges with people. And I love that you brought up social media, because I have interactions on social media that I have literally no interaction like that in my real life at all whatsoever. Like there's no actual place in my life where that's coming into my life. And then there's social media where it's just like this diverse range of energies that you have interaction with that you would never possibly interact with if you weren't online. So that's it can become another place to judge yourself. Well, I thought I was vibrating so high. Why am I still attracting, you know, these moths, as you said?
Yeah.
I think it's important to know that is a reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it really is. It's moths to the flame, right? It's like the brighter you shine, you are going to attract, you know, people who don't have your best interest, who just want to sponge off your light. And like, that's okay if you're embodied and you're really in a clear state of like, you know, I feel good today. My cup is full. I got this. You know, I can bubble over light for this person in their shadow all day. But some days you don't have it. Some days it's like, you know what, it's a rough day. I need to just not deal with this person. I'm going to like remove, you know. So I think, being tuned in. I'm the same way in my personal life. It's like I never have issues with people. Social media, you know, completely different. So I always tell people, don't judge yourself for your social media. There's just a bunch of, you know, it's a free app, you know. It's like you can't have too much expectation for it.
Absolutely. So I see there are a few questions. If you want to answer a few of them.
The second part of your question.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So what to do when you're in those situations. Again, if you're in yourself if you're really in your love, you're going to be able to just kind of remove yourself. And that's always the best thing. When someone's in their shadow, they're not conscious. That's always the thing to recognize. If someone is in their triggered shadow, they're not behaving like themselves. It's not a good time to break it down and try and heal and try to do the self, love is really the way to heal, and if somebody's just angry and triggered, they're not in a place to do that work. And so usually removing yourself until they've had time to relax and calm down and come back into consciousness, come back into like who they actually are, is always, I think, a wise tactic. If you're in a good, loving, strong space, sometimes you can just like hang out with them and they will kind of trigger self-awareness just by you being present with them. But that's only if you're feeling really pure and connected and really like in your power that day and really able to do that, because that's hard. That's not very often that I feel like I can just take it like and just be that loving, usually I'm like, I'm out. So yeah, I think that's important, is learning how to remove yourself from the situation in a kind way. Just like, you know what, I'll talk to you later, and just peace out. It's like I think that's always key. And then don't beat yourself up for the situation. That's always the second part is, yeah, that interaction didn't go how I wanted. I was having this great day, talked to this person, and now I'm just like, I'm just all, up in arms about everything, just like attacking myself and just trying to shift it back. Like, okay, it's okay that happened. It went really wrong. It isn't how I would have preferred that situation to go. In the future, I'll do this and this and this to try and prevent that situation from happening or, remove myself. But in this situation, I know I did the best I could with what I had. And I think just that loving compassion, trying to shift it back into the love. Because what happened is you were up in this high frequency and then they pulled you down into those lower emotions. So you got to then fill the cup back up, bring it back up, fill yourself back up. Yeah, so, okay. I hope that answers your question. Let's see here. Okay, maybe I should just read it. How do we balance recognizing the need? Let's see. Okay, I'll just read the whole thing. She says, it seems that we sometimes manifest the opposite, being alone, being with the wrong people. How do we balance recognizing this need and not being attached to it so we can attract what's best for us? So we actually don't attract negative things into our life. That's like kind of an illusion. It seems that way because like especially with like abuse and things, it's like when you're in a weakened state, people will come prey upon you. When you're in a weak state, people who are manipulative will come into your life. And that seems like a pattern, but it's actually not a pattern you're creating. You're just in a weak state and people come and take advantage, right? And so that's a lot of the time being with the wrong people. We think that we're manifesting those wrong people, but actually it's just that we're not standing in our power and those people are coming to feed. It's just the truth. It's unfortunate. So the way it really does just get out of anchor in love, keep bringing it back to love. Don't focus on what you're externally manifesting. Don't look for an external condition for your happiness, for your love. Always bringing it back to your core self. Like, okay, I have all these people around me like that, yeah, why am I allowing these kind of people to be in my life? And that is your choice. That is absolutely something that you can control. So that would be always bringing it back to the love in yourself, I think is a big part. And then, yeah, if you are able to love yourself when you're alone, you're going to start pulling in people who want that same kind of love, who mirror that same level of self-love. You're going to have that same frequency. So yeah, I think we often think we manifest negative things, but if you look at the way like the Taurus field, our manifestation field kind of works, it's bigger when we're in love, and when we're in fear, our manifestation field shrinks down really small. We don't really manifest fears in that same way. We mostly are just not standing in our power. And so then we attract people who are going to look for that because they are looking for people to control and manipulate. So I think that's more so how that goes. It's not, anchoring in love is always going to, yeah, you're going to start having people drop out, and there is loneliness that can come with that. Sometimes everybody in your life starts dropping out and you're like, I guess I didn't really have like true loving connections with them. But from that space, you'll start to create more loving relationships. So if you're feeling lonely or feeling like you're surrounded in the wrong people, it is worthwhile to look at, yourself, like, am I loving myself the way that I need to be loved, And so in that way, it can be a reflection, but it's not that you're actually manifesting bad people in your life. It's just that they're reflecting those ways that you're treating yourself. So definitely that one's just hard, but if you're patient and you keep working on self-love, you will start pulling in people who mirror that same frequency. So sometimes there's a gap after you've had a spiritual awakening, and suddenly you look around and you're like, everyone, I don't want any of these people in my life, like they're all mean to me, they're all like, abusive, and like, and you have to let them go, and there is that space sometimes in between when you're like, you haven't really anchored your frequency strong enough to start pulling in new people. You're just recognizing that these people are pulling you down. So it is just, there is a gap there, and that's totally normal. We call it like being in the cocoon, right? It's like the caterpillar goes in the cocoon and it's alone in the cocoon, and then you become a butterfly and can go play with the other butterflies. But until then, there is a lot of alone time, and it is learning to love yourself in that alone time, in that time when nobody's there filling you up. Learning to fill yourself up is a big part of that, I think.
I see there's a bunch of questions. Do you want to pick maybe like two more that you love? And yeah.
Someone wrote, can your frequency change over time? And absolutely, that's the whole thing we're talking. That's ascension. That's the whole goal. When I say ascension, we're just talking about raising the energy up the chakras. So you're bringing it up, connecting back to your God self, which would be like crown chakra, connecting to infinite source. And so raising your frequency up through the chakras is when we talk about ascension. And that's the whole goal, is to raise our frequency. So yeah, absolutely, your frequency can change. Learning how to fill yourself up is pretty much the first step to that, in really learning how to raise your own frequency versus having external things dictate what your frequency is going to be. Definitely a big part of that. Let's see. So what do you do on your bad days? Let it flow and accept and pass, or take action to go to a higher vibration? So it depends on, this is the whole thing, is tuning into yourself that day, not making rules and constraints, like, on this day I do this, and like, and it's learning to tune in and be, it's a bad day, maybe I can't do everything that I want to do, but I'm going to pick one thing to raise my vibration, one thing that I can do to raise me. Trying to work with yourself, give yourself permission to have bad days, and learn how to know the difference between when you're just being lazy and when you're really truly having a bad day, and learning to work with yourself, I think, will really help. Tuning in, listening to yourself. And that's where the mirror work comes in, go look yourself in the eyes. What do I need? Like, hi self, what do I need? Like, what do I need today? Like, oh, I probably just need to go sit for a little while, or just like, so yeah, on the bad days, mirror work is doubly important. Go check in with yourself and find out why it's a bad day. You're not just upset for no reason. There's a reason, and there's something coming up, something's presenting, and giving yourself permission to explore it is a big part of it.
Yay, awesome.
Correct.
Thank you so much. I want to ask you if you want to stay and hang out and close out at the end of class together, or do you prefer to close out now? It's totally up to you.
I'll hang out.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Then I'm going to put you in as an attendee.
Okay, perfect.
And then I'll bring you back on at the end, and we will close out together.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So that was amazing. How are you all feeling? Yeah, amazing. Good, 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 good. Do you all feel like you're learning another way of approaching self-love that resonates with you, maybe different than what you've heard before? Okay, perfect. I talked about this a little bit last time about the false idea of self-improvement, and this idea that like really the self is divine and always in a state of divine perfection. So it's really never the self that is improved. The self doesn't need to improve. It doesn't need to become anything. It's already whole and complete. And understanding the difference between That way of looking at it, and this idea of like, I need to become something in order to be lovable or in order to deserve love, which is a lot of times the self-improvement industry. It is an industry now, right? It is about improving the personality. It's about improving the identity. It's about improving the projection that we create in the world, which another way of talking about it is the false self. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference between the false self and the persona and the personality and the true self. I know we talked about it a little bit last time, but we're going to just kind of go through and just get really more clear on like how do we know when we're operating in the false self? And again, what we talked about last time is that the personality is an interface. It's an interface. If we look at the metaphor of this matrix reality being a video game, and we create this character in the video game, our true self, our infinite self, our God self sort of creates these personality, these roles that we play in avatars, right? So that we can have this human experience. So the distinction is when you realize that instead of you think you're the person, one level is you think you're the person and that's it. You think you're your body. When you talk about yourself, you think that you're this body, I'm this age, I'm this identity, I'm this race, I'm this gender, right? Whereas, and then I'm giving an example. So that would be the false self. The true self is, it's genderless, it doesn't have an age, it's infinite, it's timeless, right? It's all of those things. So when you start to realize that you're not just a person that has a higher self, you're actually the infinite self who's created a person, created a personality, created an avatar. Then you have access to more of who you are. You have access to your wisdom, your inspiration, your intuition, your clarity. You have the answer to problems before the problem even arises. Like all this, you're just in tune, you're in the flow, right? You know that no matter what is happening, there is a path that you can take to access the highest and best outcome, right? So those are just some of the some examples. So let's kind of talk about, let's do this together. I want you all to help me. What are some things that are characteristics of being in the false self? And I don't want to create this idea of the false self or the ego or the personality, the person, persona, as if it's wrong. Again, it is just a tool. It is a function. And what I talked about last time as well is that when you don't have this attachment to this fixed identity, then in any moment, the energy that wants to come through, the energy that wants to express itself it's very free. It's very flowing. You don't have these personality dogmas where you're like, this is what a good person always does, or this is what, this kind of person does, right? So again, we're just going to use this terminology for now, the false self, the person. What are some of the characteristics of this personality self? What are we, right? When I was younger, I had a persona of being tough. Okay, great. So a lot of us can relate to that, right? Let's see. I feel like I'm fake or performing. Okay. What about needing other people's approval, right? When we're in the identity self, don't we need others' approval, right? Caring what others think. What else? Comparing ourselves to others, right? What else? Yep, it feels like it's a performance. Waiting for someone, like you're waiting for something. You feel like you're resisting. You're seeking something outside of yourself. Okay. What else? You don't feel like you have enough resources, right? You need permission from someone else. You feel separate. You feel like you're not living up to your expectations. You're always trying too hard. You're trying to fit in. Sometimes you maybe have low self-worth, self-doubt. You don't feel good enough. You feel scattered and unfocused. Someone said thinking about the past, anticipating the future, not being in the now. Right. What about judgments? When we're in that self, aren't we judgmental and critical of ourselves and others? right? Not wanting to disappoint people. Someone said saying cliche things. Not doing what I feel like I should be doing, or maybe even having a lot of ideas about shoulds, right? Beating ourselves up. Yep, exactly. Right? Don't we often focus on the problem? Don't we feel like I'm this little small person and I don't have the power to affect like my reality, right? So we feel powerless and we feel bound by circumstances. Maybe we're wallowing. Yeah, so the should narrative is very strong, right? Do you feel like you spend a majority of your time going from problem to problem? Like you just are like, okay, I solved one problem, now I'm on to the next one. Or like you're spinning your wheels kind of, and you feel small. You feel like world is so big, life is so big, and you're little, right? So that's how I feel. That's how I know when I'm operating from that self. Those are some examples. There's so many more, right? I don't feel confident to take action towards what I really want, right? I might even, another example is if I feel intimidated by someone, or if I feel jealous, or if I feel any of those things, automatic red flag, I'm operating from the personality, right? What about the true self? What are some characteristics? What do we feel like when we are operating from that place of the true self, right? Don't we consciously choose thoughts that support us, right? We feel light, we feel embodied, we feel expanded, we feel anything's possible. Freedom, peace, compassion, authentic, fun, full of joy, right? You have a kind of like all is well kind of attitude, clear and succinct, right? Don't you have a clarity and a focus on your truth? No fucks given. Yep, that's true. Simplicity. You feel confident whatever action you take. Don't you kind of feel like whatever I do is going to work out? Like no matter what I do, everything's going to work out kind of thing, right? Like unbothered. Yep. Don't you also follow through? You feel in the flow, right? You feel like you take steps and you're actually going to do. Like you're like, I need to make changes and I'm actually going to do it. You pleasantly surprise yourself. The universe just unfolds in front of you. Yeah, like you're owning the video game. Don't you feel like you're the creator of the video game? Like instead of the video game having rules, you're like, I'm the programmer. Like I programmed this video game and I can change the simulation anytime I want to, right? Everything's right, right? Isn't it, don't you also feel like you just have a force field, like things just bounce off you, right? Like when people are projecting onto you or sending things your way, kind of just bounces off you. There's a levity, there's no fear. Okay, perfect. Bullshit ricochets fast. Yep, absolutely, right? You don't have any problem saying no. You say no and you don't have any guilt, you don't worry about disappointing people, right? And you let go of so many attachments. So that's the thing. I think that there are a lot of things that block, and next month we're actually going to be talking about blocks. We're going to be going in depth and talking about blocks, but I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the blocks that prevent us, because that greater part of ourselves, we're always that. So it's never, we need to like, it's this interesting thing that's hard for the mind to even comprehend. There isn't actually anything that we need to do to be connected to ourselves, because we're always the self. However, there are things that we are already doing that prevent that connection from being realized. So it's almost like an undoing. It's like a non-doing. It's like a non-action, right? It's like that feeling of letting go and just getting out of your own way, right? So it's kind of like I'm trying to describe in like an energetic state that isn't necessarily always translatable in language, right? But it's like, yeah, someone said, pull the blinds back. It's just that feeling of like taking a full deep breath. It's like, wow, okay, that air was already there. It was always available. I just wasn't taking a full breath and I was feeling like I couldn't breathe, right? So it's that feeling. It's that feeling of freedom. For me, it's a feeling of freedom. I associate it with freedom. And for me, what freedom is, it's being exactly who I am in the present moment without suppressing myself, without any dogma, without any rigidity, and without any judgment, right? And that means that we go through these different stages of awareness. And a question that my teacher had always offered us was this question of, do I control knowledge, or does knowledge control me? And the reason this question is important is because especially when we get to this place where we're on a spiritual journey, and I've talked about the spiritualized ego many times in this school, once the personality gets a hold of these ideas of what it means to be a spiritual person, now it's the identity that's trying to become spiritual. It's actually not your soul is letting go of the persona. It's like this level of the personality where now the ego is like, oh, I want to be a spiritual person. And you can take knowledge from that place, and that knowledge can control you. I'll give you an example. Some people have this awareness and this knowledge of the benefits of, let's say, being vegan. Right? I'm going to use this very overt example. Some people come into this awareness, right? And then what happens? The ego gets so wrapped up in it. The ego gets so attached to, this is what a good person does. If you're really spiritual, you would be vegan. If you were truly, right? Because, and you can hear it. You can literally hear that this is the personality holding a rigid dogma and a judgment that they have decided this is what a spiritual person does. And it's an attachment that you have. And then you project that attachment onto everyone else, and everyone that doesn't do it the way you do is now not spiritual. I had posted a video or picture of bone broth the other day, and I got this long lecture paragraph from someone about how, you know, I can't believe that you drink bone broth and this and that. And I didn't respond. I never kind of respond. A lot of times I just delete these kind of comments. But what I really wanted to say in that moment is, okay, I'm not spiritual then. And it wasn't like a clap back. I wasn't trying to be, you know, like trigger this person. And at the same time, I literally felt that feeling of, I'm not attached to needing to be a spiritual person, right? Like the part of me that is like my authentic self doesn't need to be creating any kind of identity of being a spiritual person. Like it was that free for me that I'm like, then I'm not spiritual. And I'm okay with that, because these are just concepts at the end of the day. These are just concepts that we have. They're preconceived ideas, and right, they could become a form of bondage. And that's when we're controlled by our knowledge. That's when we come into an idea of meditation or eating a certain way or living a certain way, where it could be beneficial if it was authentically aligned, but we're coming from a place of judgment, and we're coming from a place of attachment and identity, operating in the identity, and a place of rightness versus wrongness, right? And what happens is we actually miss out on living life. We actually miss out on being in the present moment with what wants to be expressed through us that's organic, which is not going to look the same every moment, right? It's not going to look the same from one moment to the next. That's why when Karen was talking about you're going to tune in, you're going to know what to do in the moment, not because you have a dogma that you created ahead of time of what a good person does, that you're trying to hold onto this image of yourself. You're going to be empty in that moment, not attached to the outcome, not attached to looking a certain way, not attached to your own rigidity and your dogma, and just present and available. What wants to be expressed through me right now? That's to me what authenticity is. And it is understanding that these levels of attachment are what truly block for me the true self. And it gets more subtle and more subtle and more subtle, because again, this concept of being on a spiritual path can become a dogma. It can become less about awareness and more about attachment, right? And we are operating from that place of the person when we're doing that, right? So it's this understanding that we need to kind of move through a little bit, And no, like one of the blocks, for example, I wrote a couple of them down that are really specific that I think to self-love. One of the blocks that comes from religious dogma is this idea of having to earn God's love, right? Or however you perceive the infinite source of all life in the universe, whether you refer to it as God or source or the universe or the Tao or energy, consciousness, whatever it is, right? This idea that we have to earn the love of this energy being, right? This source, and that this idea of punishment, right? So if I self-flagellate myself enough, if I beat myself up enough, this is also like a lot of times this like self-attack programming comes from lifetimes of self-flagellation. There was many spiritual paths, that religious paths that promoted this idea of punishing yourself as a way to turn you into a better, more worthy person of God's love, right? Someone said it's very Catholic, right? And there's different iterations of it in all of the primary earthly religions. But we take that notion that's very ingrained in us, right? And then we do it with everything. We think that we don't deserve abundance unless we earn it. We can't conceptualize what it feels like in our body to just breathe in abundance, like air. Like everything we need is here. It was interesting to have this air quality thing happening because you take for granted that you just have clean air all the time, right? But one of the things that I do in my abundance inquiry is say, I like the feeling of breathing money in and breathing money out, like that it's that available for us, that love is that available for us, that everything we need is that available just purely because we exist, like just purely because we were created, we deserve. We are still caught up in this loophole of like, I can't receive because I didn't earn it. So it's like Karen said, it's this conditional abundance, conditional love that is perpetuated from ourselves even. We say like, I woke up a couple days ago, broken blood vessel in my eye, was having a not loving myself day, right? I was having a very like conditional loving day with myself, and I was like beating myself up around this very like physical thing that was happening. And then of course, my practice kicked in, and of course it wasn't accessible to me immediately because I was tired. I had been running around, I've been traveling so much, I've been on the road, and then all of a sudden I remembered like, what I need right now is to be kind with myself. What I need right now is to be loving with myself. I need to be accepting of myself. And thankfully, I have people in my life that if I'm feeling that way and I'm not okay with how I look and it's affecting how I feel, the other people are like, it's not a problem. Like, I love you the same, like just being conditional with me. And that has come from cultivating that deep within myself and being that cup that overflows and having those kind of relationships. But yes, doesn't mean that we don't have tests and slip up. Absolutely, right? So that feeling of, again, needing to earn, that feeling of self-attack, self-punishment, as Karen talked about, the shadow, I have about 3 extensive articles on my blog detailing how to do shadow work. So I won't talk about that too much right now, but I love that, again, Karen said, and what I feel also is that the shadow is the inner child. And the reason that we have a shadow, there's so much, kind of like insight through the work of people like Carl Jung that talk about why we have the shadow. But most of what the shadow is created from is when you're a child and you're given these messages that certain parts of you are not acceptable. And because when you're a child, you do rely on someone else outside of you to take care of you, right? You do rely on your parents to feed you, clothe you, house you. You do rely on your parents being that source of everything that you need as a child. So we get trained to be conditional. We get trained to be like people pleasers. We are trained as a child to, you know, be pleasing to other people so that we can get the love we need to be taken care of, right? But unfortunately, there is not a shift from that into adulthood where we then let go of that paradigm of needing to be accepted, needing to be pleasing, and all of that. So we have a culture now of pick me culture, right? Where everyone is like, if this person picks me, whether it even, with even small iterations of that, like if this person follows me back online, right? Some form of like, if this person picks me, then I'm worthy. We play this please pick me culture game so many different ways, right? Then there's the you complete me culture. We're, you know, and all the different iterations of that, where you, someone said, can you also have a parenting class? Definitely, that will be next year. We'll do that. But we have this, you know, version of like, you know, if I'm half of a, you know, person, and then I'll meet my other half and then I'll be whole. We see, you know, the toxic romance culture that comes out of that, you know, and all of the different new age concepts that really came in right in on time and reinforced that, whether it be like twin flame, soulmate, this, that, right, kinds of things that end up being very, very alluring to people that have that programming of pick me or you complete me. It just becomes another, and becomes a concept that the ego latches onto, where it recreates another version of the same feedback scenario. And then there's also obsession, comparison, and worship culture. We pick someone online that we are obsessed with, that we fan out over, we watch them, we watch their every move, whether it be, you know, everything from celebrities to now like online gurus or whatever. And we compare ourselves constantly to that person. Again, it's been reinforced so much with the social media where we literally are like watching people's lives online. And it just reinforces this relationship with self-attack. Right. So these are just a few of the blocks. There's also the block of self-righteousness, right? I talked a little bit about that when the ego becomes spiritualized, and then the way that I do the spiritual path is the way that everyone should do it. That creates separation from the self, from the true self. And then the other one is forgiveness. This is such a huge one that I know that I'm going to have to come back to. I want to get to this loving kindness meditation so that we can make that the focus. But I do know that we're going to need to come back to doing a class on forgiveness work, because the thing about understanding this reality is that, you know, this whole entire Earth School is a play. It's a movie, it's a video game, whatever. And at the core of all of it, you guys know the foundation of the school is the law of one, that we are all one, we're all connected, we all come from the same source. And so when we have these attack thoughts with other people, these negative charges towards other people, they actually are negative charge towards ourselves. As the paradigm of karma started to evolve, we understand that really what true karma means is that when you are doing something to someone else, you are truly doing it to yourself, because we're all one. And understanding that when we are holding these negative charges towards people, that it really is a charge that we are creating in our own body, that we're holding in our own body. And oftentimes we think like, well, I don't want to forgive this person because they don't deserve to be forgiven. And I talked about this last class. Forgiveness is never about the other person. It's about letting go of the negative charges within your own self so that you can be free. Because if not, you keep reliving the experience over and over again because you haven't fully let it go, right? So that doesn't mean spiritual bypassing. I just want to be clear. It doesn't mean, you know, someone did something, someone was abusive with you, and you just say, well, because I'm ascending, I don't have to, you know, I don't get angry about that. That's also not loving, right? So it's about authenticity. So it's about feeling your real feelings, not suppressing them, but also not spiritually bypassing them. And what I have found to be really amazing is that in this current time, in this current energy that we have on the planet, you're able to do this work a lot faster. You're able to have an experience with someone that is maybe not what you prefer, to recognize that you're triggering an old trauma, right? You're triggering an old wound, and to see that there is a part of you that called in something that was going to trigger this so that you could release it for good, right? So that is something that, you know, again, we talked about that many times when we talk about the emotional body and what it means to really like release trapped emotions. But what I find now is that stuff's coming up, and a lot of it is just old stuff. We are in this age of purification, and that means that all of the things that are lower energy, creation, stories, dramas, whatever that we're still holding in the body have to come up out of the body, come up out of our energy field, so that we can embody more of our true infinite self, so that we can be walking on earth really as the true self, no longer as the false self, and that we can be creating our personality in the moment fresh, as we would be interfacing in every experience new and aware and not attached to the outcome, not attached to being right or wrong, not attached to the good guy, bad guy, not even attached to this notion of like, you know, I'm fighting for the light and this is dark, you know, like even the light versus dark game was all part of the agreement of Earth, you know, and I know that that can be challenging to sort of understand. And that doesn't mean that everything that happens that comes from a place of being non-integrated is just okay. No, it's not that. I say absolutely be your completely loving, kind self and accept absolutely no abuse. And so that's the upgrade as far as I see it, right? And it is understanding, and this is kind of why I asked Karen this question. For me, the way that I see what's happening with this reality is that there is sort of a split, and there is a split of, some people say it's a 2-world split, some people say it's a 3-world split of people who are choosing ascension because ascension and awakening and enlightenment, all these kinds of things, it is a free will choice. At some point, you know, everything on the planet is going to have to either make a decision if it wants to ascend or not. However, there is, what we're seeing is a sort of like vast kind of like split apart of people who want to live in the old reality, who want to live in the old paradigm, and they want to have more experience of separation, of suffering, of learning through karmic agreements and all of that. And people who are like, I'm ready to complete this chapter in the Earth School. And for me, forgiveness is one of the primary spiritual technologies that we have that is going to allow us to see everyone at the end of the play, thank people for their role, you know, like, thank you for the role you play, thank you for the lessons, I love you, I forgive you, I love myself, I forgive myself, and I'm ready to move on to what's next, right? Which for me is creating heaven on earth. That's what New Earth is. That's why this is New Earth Mystery School. Yeah, let's see. Oh, let's see. Before I go into the the last thing I want to say, before I go into the loving kindness meditation, I want to also mention, I love that Karen talked about mirror work. I also have something that I would do with my clients where I would have them create a self-love list. And what that means is that you would create a list of things that you do. You've probably seen me post this online many times. I've said, When I'm loving myself, I do this, right? So you create a list of the things that you would do when you are loving yourself. Because when you're not loving yourself, guess what? You're not going to have conscious awareness of that. So if you have that list that you wrote in a moment when you are loving yourself, what you can do is you can scan that list and you can say, what would be most exciting for me to do right now? Now this is vibrational attunement work, right? Talked about this many times. It's about tuning your vibration, which for me is a daily practice, along with meditation and purification and grounding and centering and sort of like clearing my energy field of what doesn't belong to me every day, sort of like setting the intention, right? But vibrational attunement work, right? Because it is for me about energy self-mastery. So checking in that list when you know, like, wow, I'm depleted, I'm low energy, I'm starting to get into that negative feedback loop, I'm starting to get into a little bit of self-attack. Let me pull out this self-love list. Oh, right, I have, right, Resonance Apothecary resins that I can burn. Like, and you can look on the list and you can see what is simple and what calls to you in that moment, and it might be different every time. And this is a part of a devotional practice. It might be playing sounds. It might be going for a walk. It might be drinking tea. You can drink tea with mindfulness, right? And it can be meditation. I like tea drinking meditation, right? Like you can do a walking meditation. Meditation doesn't have to be a sitting down, closing your eyes kind of thing, right? One of my favorite meditations is a Taoist meditation, which is a standing meditation, right? So there's all these different things that you can do when you do with awareness and you do with being present, right, that can help you access the true self. And when you have that list, right, you can, and what I say to put on the list is write things that are small, that are simple, up to things that would be, you know, maybe if you had more money, if you had more time, right? So you might, like, for example, the other day, last week, I had 2 dreams about being in the spa, right? I had one dream that some people were chasing me and I hid in the spa. And then I had another dream that a police officer was trying to arrest me. And I was like, I can't get arrested. I need to go. I'm meeting someone at the spa, right? So that let me know that it was time for a spa day, right? So I made that, I knew it wasn't just like a 5-minute meditation day. Like I was like, I need, right? And it was interesting because that was the day that I woke up with the broken blood vessel in my eye. So I was like, my body's letting me know that it needs self-care and that it needs love. My higher self sending it to me in dreams, like, you know, I'm getting the message. So again, make that list be one where you have very, very simple 2-minute, 1-minute, 5-minute things, all the way up to like maybe I need to take a vacation. So have that list full of things that you would do when you're loving yourself. Maybe when you're loving yourself, you call your friends and you don't self-isolate, right? Those kinds of things are going to be so important to break patterns, of reinforcing the old way of being, which is not loving the self. So I hope that makes sense. And if you all want to work on that, those of you that are in the portal, if you want to work on that in our community meeting this month, we can definitely do that as well. So awesome. So the practice that I wanted to teach in this class today is called a loving kindness meditation. How many of you have practiced this? It's also referred to as metta. It is one of my absolute favorite. I figured a lot of you probably have, so that's awesome. Oh, from my SoundCloud, okay. So the loving kindness meditation is, again, it is about actually cultivating that energy. So it's an energy field. It is a felt thing. It is about bringing that energy into the body for yourself first, right? So cultivating that metta towards yourself is the first stage. And we're going to talk about how to do it. The way that you do it is, again, there's no expectations of getting anything in return. This is just about extending this energy first to yourself, right? And then you repeat certain phrases for yourself, and then there's 5 different stages. So the first stage is cultivating metta towards yourself. The second stage is cultivating it towards a good friend or someone that you love. The third stage is cultivating it towards a neutral person, so maybe like a neighbor, someone that you don't have neither kind of positive or negative feelings toward, just kind of neutral. The fourth one is cultivating it towards a difficult person in your life. And then the last stage is cultivating loving kindness towards all beings. So that's the way that it works. And I'm going to give you all just the example of the phrases. We don't need to necessarily go through and do a whole meditation. I know many of you all have your own meditation practice. So I just want to add this in as another tool. So again, this is about pure love, which everyone has the potential to access because we are that love itself, right? So we absolutely begin with loving ourselves. And sometimes if you're like, I don't know what that, like if right now what's happening for you is you're like, I don't know what that feels like. I can't access that feeling. Because for me, this isn't about a mind thing. This is about cultivating. This is actually how I learned self-love. I did this practice for about a year. And I had just so much like love to give, right? Because I was cultivating within myself first. And then I would do this towards other people in my life. And I would see situations transform because of this energy without a lot of like work. I would just have like something with someone where a situation that might have been problematic just kind of like dissipated and it was all good, right? So this is very real. And like I said, is a felt thing. So just as a way to sort of access this feeling in yourself right now in your heart, think about, and we're going to repeat the phrases over and over because as you know, with mantras and with affirmations and all this kind of things, it's about repetition, saying it over and over again and letting the feelings actually permeate the body. Because what happens is then you start vibrating in resonance with that, right? That feeling, that knowing. So it is very, very important to find the words that really speak to you. So I'm going to give some examples, but there are many, many variations of the phrases. But just for now, just in terms of like finding a way to access that feeling, think about an object that you can easily feel love towards. For me, it's a kitten, right? Like if I was thinking about like, oh my God, like a little kitten, like a newborn kitten, let's say an abandoned kitten, like just something that, it doesn't matter what is happening in the world, doesn't matter what's going on, with you. If you were to, and it, again, may be different for someone else, it may be plants, it may be a sibling or a child, or whatever. Just think about some object where when you think about this object, there's absolutely no block whatsoever towards just flowing love and compassion and kindness. Think about if you were to see an abandoned kitten that needed to be rescued, right? Like it's literally everything in me just like melts. And there's no feeling of I need to get something. There's no feeling of like, did you earn it? But were you a good kitty, right? It's just like, it's so pure and easy to access, right? That feeling towards, and you hear it and you're like, it's gonna die if I don't save this kitten. I have to like come to the rescue, right? So just think about that feeling and just notice in your body, like I feel warm. That's what I feel. Like when I am thinking about this little kitten, I immediately feel warm, right? And I feel my heart open and I feel the focus on my heart center. And I'll notice myself sort of like at peace and feeling comfortable and feeling relaxed and sort of like, and that's the feeling of loving kindness, right? So that's the feeling the feeling state, the feeling tone that we're going to be trying to access, right? And we're going to be anchoring this meditation in the sensations in the heart, breathing in and out of the heart, right? By generating this kind feeling towards ourselves. And you can also just start to notice if you feel any areas of mental block or numbness or self-judgment or self-hatred or self-attack, right? And just drop deeper beneath all of that. Drop deeper into the place where you care for yourself, where you desire health and safety for yourself. Just like kind of drop into that place, right? And again, we often have difficulty doing this for ourselves first. This is why metta always starts with ourselves, so we can generate that warm, gentle, loving feeling, right? And these are the phrases, and we can repeat them over and over again. The first one is, may I be filled with loving kindness. It's just simple. It's a simple prayer of, may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be happy. May I be well. May I be safe. May I be peaceful and at ease. Now, you might start feeling this and you might start feeling emotional. You might start feeling like you want to cry immediately as you're cultivating that energy in you and you're allowing yourself to feel your own love. It can definitely bring up stuff, and that's okay. May I be free from inner and outer harm and danger. May I be free of mental suffering and distress. May I be free of physical pain and suffering. May I be healthy and strong. May I be safe from harm. May I be happy just as I am. I love that one. Like, just as I am, without anything needing to change at all. May I be happy just as I am. May I be peaceful with whatever is happening. And may I care for myself in this ever-changing world graciously and joyously. So those are the phrases. And so you would direct that loving kindness towards yourself, and you can repeat them over and over again, right? And when you feel that energy of that cultivation, you want to feel it. You want to really feel it. Give yourself enough time. Don't speed through this. This is not a 5-minute meditation, by the way. This is a longer meditation. But it's so worthwhile because you really feel your energy invigorated with opening up the channel to feel this. And it's generated within yourself, right? It's from the divine, right? And it's from the part of you that is your God self, but it's and the part of you that is greater than that. It's from source, but you have access to open the channel and to be a conduit for that at any time. You never need anything to change to shift that feeling of loving kindness toward yourself and to cultivate it. And believe me, over time, it builds up an energy field. Then the next one, as I said, is that you want to direct this when you felt it for yourself, because it can be, oh, I'm just going to skip through the part where it's towards me and get to everything else. So you can't do that, right? You got to really be with that part. Then you want to bring to mind a friend or someone in your life that you deeply care about, someone that really sort of invites that very pure feeling of unconditional loving kindness. So we start with these because, you know, with ourselves is the most important, and then with someone else is kind of the easiest before we get to the more challenging stuff, right? You want to really like be in that juiciness of that loving kindness before you try to bring to mind someone that's challenging in your life, right? But again, it's not about getting anything back. So this is someone who it takes really no effort to love and respect and have reverence for, someone who just immediately, like someone that it's just funny, I can literally feel the energy in my spine just whoop, like someone that you immediately, when you think of them, you just like, I just want to love this person to death. Like, I'm just like, I love you, you know? That feeling, and it just automatically makes you smile, makes your heart open, makes you feel expanded and connected. And you're inviting that feeling of pure joy and unconditional love. in more, and then you're directing it towards this person. May you be filled with loving kindness as you're thinking about this person in your direct. You can visualize them sitting in front of you, however, but you're actually thinking about someone specific. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be happy. May you be well. May you be safe, and may you be peaceful and at ease. It's just beaming that love to someone that you care about, all right? And sinking into the intention in a really heartfelt way, noticing these feelings arise, connecting the feelings with the phrases. That's why it's important that the phrasing is what works for you. Again, there's many variations of this. Another one that I love is, may I be unbothered by the comings and goings of situations. I don't know why I love that one. That's been a mantra for me for a while. It's one that you can also integrate into the meta practice. So there's many, many variations. I've had many teachers teach it in different ways, but these are kind of the general phrases, right? And it gets stronger as you keep repeating them. It's like I said, I can only describe it as you're building up an energetic force field, an energy field that is felt, it's tangible. And it's also visible to people that can see energy, so FYI. So what is okay, so the next thing is moving to a neutral person. So, you know, again, the example they give often is maybe just a neighbor, someone that you see and you say hello to, you don't really have nothing specific, right, with them. And then just allowing yourself to feel tenderness and loving care for their well-being. Same thing. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be happy. May you be well. Like, it's just that feeling of like, when I see someone doing well, like, it makes me feel good, you know, like, and that's just pure, you know, and may you be safe, just like wishing safety for people. And may you be peaceful and at ease, right? And directing that towards someone. Oh, I'm happy you guys are enjoying this. It really is, you really feel it. Someone said this feels amazing. You really feel it. And this is for sure one of my primary self-love practices. Now, the next one is someone that you have some difficulty with, right? These beautiful teachers that trigger you to help you to see where you have more work to do, right? Sometimes you know those people in your life and they're kind of playing that role of the antagonist, and sometimes we wrote them in that role, sometimes, right, like they're in that role because our energy is low and all that. There's can be many reasons why, you know, we have these role players in our reality, right? But someone that you know is a little bit some difficulty with, maybe some hostile feelings, some resentment. And if you're doing this on a regular basis, what you're going to find is that the person that's going to come to mind, I can tell you, is going to be not the bigger ones, because you're going to have done a lot of that work. You're going to have done the forgiveness. It's going to be maybe someone you had a small interaction with online or traffic with. Or, you know what? I'm going to bring love and kindness to that person that cut me off in traffic and I got really upset. And, you know, I was feeling a little resentment towards them. I'm going to do my meditation. They're going to come to mind, like, right? And you maybe even remember their face. And the thing about it is that if the difficult person comes up and you feel like you're like, I can't do it, right? You can say, to the best of my ability, you know, you can say, to the best of my ability, may you be filled with loving kindness. And I had an interesting experience in Sedona where there was, you know, an interaction with someone. It wasn't directly with me, but, you know, I witnessed it. And the thing is always, it comes back to, it's like, I hope that person's well. I wish them well. Like, really, you know, at the end of the day, it's not saying that what they did is okay. It's not like, so, yeah, I'm here for more of that kind of abuse. No, but it's like, I'm not going to have a negative charge created in me, like a negative fireball created in me to like direct at you, because I don't want to treat myself that way, right? So you can do that transmutation. And again, this is not a faking thing. This isn't like, I'm just trying to be so compassionate because that person's so negative. You can hear when the ego is playing that game. It's really cultivating this energy inside yourself so that you can truly send this towards someone, and not like a kind of like return to sender, I'm going to return that person's energy back to them kind of thing, right? It's not that either. So you do have to cultivate that filling up your own cup to be able to do this. When you're trying to give love to someone that you have difficulty with and you don't have it for yourself, that's not kind to yourself. That's not loving yourself either. So this difficult person that you have these feelings towards, to the best of my ability, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you find peace. May you be well. May you be safe. May you be peaceful and at ease, right? And if you're really having a challenge with this, you can return to the number 2 person. You can return back to that feeling of the person that you feel that easeful with, and start over and come back. It's okay. This is why it's a practice, right? And so after the difficult person, you want to radiate loving kindness to all beings. So staying in touch with the warm, tender, loving kindness at the center of your being, and beginning to feel a sense of all living beings, and allowing yourself to be a conduit for this loving kindness, and using your imagination, right? You can imagine touching the hearts of all life in the universe, unconditionally and inclusively, everything, right? And you can feel that profound sense of interconnectedness. The way that I would do this, slightly different, but I like to remix sometimes some of these things. The way that I would do this when I'm doing loving kindness towards all beings is that I first, I picture everyone in my home. I feel an energy bubble now that extends to everyone in my home, and now everyone in my town, and now everyone in my city, and now everyone in my state, and then the country, and then the world, right? So I'm expanding that energy out to include all life. Same, may all beings be filled with loving kindness. This is very important because there's a lot of healing that needs to take place on the planet, right? May all beings in existence be safe, happy, healthy, and live joyously. And holding that vision of wow, if everyone could just be safe and healthy, just at peace and at ease in their heart and mind, in their body, just wishing that, feeling that, being a conduit for that intention and directing that energy in life. You're going to feel it in your body. It's going to feel amazing, actually. It's going to feel really good. You're going to feel like a love bubble, So, for me, self-love is obviously always about heart medicine, and is about opening your heart and being a conduit for that energy. So again, as you are, what's going to happen when you do this, I can guarantee you, is that you're going to find yourself being in situations with people where you're directing love at them. You're going to be out, you're going to see something, you're going to see someone, maybe a child, maybe it starts with children, and you're just beaming love at them, and whoever. It's that, and it's your presence in the world just becomes this place where you're a source of compassion and love. And it isn't about doing a thing. It's about a being state. And it's about that's your purpose. You're on purpose when you're there in service in that way. And you're not in service in a way where it's self-sacrificing, but because you've taken the time to cultivate that energy field within yourself, right? You're able to expand from that place, and there's an endless abundance of that energy that you can send to the universe, right? Sometimes when you're doing this, the opposite feelings can come up: anger, grief, sadness, right? Take all of these as an indication of that's what's been in your heart that you've held there, and that because you're cultivating this loving kindness, those emotions can't stay there, right? and just be patient, right? And remember that there's no need to suppress those feelings back in. There's no need to judge yourself for having those feelings. It's almost like, oh wow, there was some other day, last night I tweeted, I'm angry and it's funny. Like, you know, it was like something happened and I was like, I'm angry, but it's also funny. Like, you know, what happened? And like, you know, like that was a real feeling. I was feeling both at the same time. I was feeling like something that happened. I was like, I'm mad, but it's also funny, you know, and that lets me know that there's some stuff in my heart that is coming up, and that's okay. And I can hold space for myself in that way. Yeah, that's it. I think that's everything. We've gone a little bit over. And I want to honor everyone's time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring Karen back on so that we can close out. If you all want to put some questions in the Q&A for me, that's great. And then I'll stay. I'm happy to stay, you know, a little bit more, maybe answer like 3 or 4 questions. But I want to honor everyone's time if anyone needs to go. And I'm going to bring Karen back on. We're going to thank her for being our guest and hear more about where we can find her work. Okay, perfect. Hello. Okay, you might need to unmute your microphone again just because it might have gone off.
Am I back on? Could everyone?
Yay!
Yeah. Okay.
Hi. Okay. So thank you so much for being with us. This was awesome.
Yes.
Thanks so much for being here. And so you're my favorite guest. Aww. So where can people access you, and what are your current offerings right now that you have for people that are available?
Yeah, on my website, I have a blog that's got a bunch of free articles on Ascension and kind of just some different practices and things that can help. So there's some free stuff there, as well as my Twitter feed is always pretty much like the daily updates on what I'm kind of pulling in from the energy and sensing and everything. So I also do astrology. So yeah, and I have sessions on all of that on my website as well, which is just KarenNeverland.com. And then I also have a couple books out. One of them is on self-love. I really feel like you know, it was my entire life's work up to that point on kind of learning how to embody self-love. And I put pretty much everything I had in there. And I feel like it definitely helps with that journey of just, because it's such an inward journey for self-love. And so reading a book really is, I think, a good way to go about learning all of that, because you're kind of, it's inward. It kind of brings the focus back in. So yeah, all of that you can find on my website, just KarenNeverland.com. Links to everything on there. But yeah, I'm just
got your book. And I'm excited because we have a book club in our community, and I was going to be talking about the book in the book club this month too.
Oh, thank you. I love it. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really think self-love is like the key to it. Kind of unlocks everything. And once you have that foundation of that house, you really have, you can do anything. Oh, somebody asked how I spell my last name. It's Neverland, like Peter Pan, like the place, Neverland. So yeah, just like the place, which is like, I don't know, that was like a name that I came in my own self journey, came to that name as just kind of, you know, embodying that this is a new world and that we're really creating this new world. And I didn't really feel like I was from anywhere as a, you know, growing up. I wanted to create my own world. So there's a lot of reasons for that last name, but that was a big part, is that we're creating this beautiful new world, and it is Neverland, and it is magical.
Amazing. Okay, so that's great. So you all can check out her website and follow her on Twitter. Are you on Instagram too?
I'm not. I mean, I have an account there, but it's not public at the moment. So yeah, Twitter's the only place right now. But then you can also go to my website and everything's there as well, so you can find it.
And then you said that you do sessions. What type of sessions do you do? You said you do astrology and
yeah. I do astrology, and I'm a Reiki master as well. So I'll do distance healing sessions with that, as well as just yeah, astrology readings for helping kind of get in tune. And yeah, that it's mostly healing and guidance, I suppose, just kind of a general blanket.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for having me. It's been just beautiful to connect with all of you. I love all the comments and everything. You guys are all so sweet. Thank you so much for having me and just being so amazing, and you know, just keep it up. You guys are doing a good job.
Yay, awesome. Thank you, Karen and Kitty. Okay, I'm going to thank you again and just move you back in, and thank you for being here. And I'm going to, everyone else that has to go, thank you all so much. I'm going to hang out a little bit and answer just a couple of questions. So yeah, let's see what's here. Let's see. Someone said, do you have any recommendations for practices that may ease the more difficult shadow integrations? I find I have more difficulty working with self-love in terms of positive aspects of myself that I project onto others. I find I have an easier time with working with the negative aspects, the things I hate about myself. Okay. The way that another layer of like cultivating self-love is I do cultivate some of what I consider to be the divine attributes. So this is an interesting thing in my tradition, in Sufi tradition. There are these, there's this concept called the 99 names. And so it's all of these different iterations of the divine, right? Of God, source, Allah, the creator. And one might be, you know, the most merciful. So you would spend time with these attributes, right? You would spend time with like, what is mercy? What does it mean to have mercy? Mercy is very different than compassion, right? Mercy is also very different than grace, like having grace. So there's all of these different, you know, and that doesn't have to be the sort of blueprint. It's just one that I work with. But you start to understand that there are these attributes of the divine that we all have the ability to embody because we're not separate from the creator. And not in a dogmatic way, but in a really like loving, genuine way. I actually have, this is kind of one of the only like tarot, it's not really tarot, but it's only one of the like decks of cards that I work with. It's the 99 names. And I'll actually pull, and I also have a book that I use, and I'll pull an attribute at that time. And that may be, for example, what I'll work on cultivating that day. I work on practicing that in that day. You know, and it's not necessarily every day, but it is something that I do as a part of like my altar work. So there's a word that is, it's considered to be like the companion, right? And what does it mean to be a companion to someone like on their journey? You know, so all of these really subtle states that, you know, I love that you said, that you, in terms of positive aspects that you project onto others. And we know this, we've heard it many times, I'm sure, that when you see something in someone else that you love and that you respect and that you feel aligned with, it is because it is in you. It is because it is a shadow aspect. And oftentimes we do consider the shadow to just be like the negative things, right? But when you find that there's something in someone, maybe like a natural leadership quality, and you're like, wow, I really admire that. That's because it's an unintegrated part of you, right? You know, and what's interesting is I have a video, it's really old. it's about the Essene teachings on the sacred mirrors. And I go through and I break down these different shadow aspects of the mirroring component of the universe, which is that, you know, we do tend to project what we judge within ourselves as judgments onto other people. So there's this breakdown. One of the mirrors is something that we lost, had stolen, or gave away, right? So that's an interesting one because it can show up in a way where maybe someone else is really embodying being a creative, and that's something that you gave. And this is the example that I gave in the video, and you gave up maybe that, right? You gave that part of you away to be a mother, to focus on being a mother. And you see that in other people, and it may arise as jealousy, right? So it's a way to kind of do shadow work with understanding these specific mirrors. I think it's one of my favorite still teachings. Anyone that, like I said, did private work with me knows that I talk about that the shadowing component of that, and seeing the different mirrors that, we attract what we judge. That's why it's confusing sometimes when you have someone show up in your experience and you're like, but I'm not doing that. So why is that what I'm seeing in the mirror? And there's many different, more subtle versions. We also kind of like attract aspects of our mother and father, right? Like, there's another one that's like our most forgotten love, right? So we call in mirrors of maybe a love that we had forgotten, right? So all of that's there, and that's another thing that you can look at to kind of go more deeper into shadow work. And I also do have, like I said, on my Medium, there's like 3 articles where I talk about shadow work more in depth too. Let's see. Emily asked, do you need to know the role they played, or can you move on without fully understanding the lesson through forgiveness? Let's see. How can we, I do personally, I'll say, I think it is important to know the role the person is playing, because if you are calling in a teacher for a certain lesson, right, and you want to do forgiveness, right? Sometimes people say, okay, well, I want to do forgiveness because I want that person gone. Like, I want to forgive because I don't want to have that kind of experience again. And that's okay. That's not necessarily like a distortion, but it's not the fullness of like what forgiveness is good for. And it's not the fullness of like what we have access to when we do forgiveness. However, at the same time, I do think that it can be important to recognize, why am I seeing the same kind of pattern show up again? Oh, okay, it's because I'm working on a certain lesson. I'm working on a certain theme in my life. I'm working on the theme of like not overgiving. So I'm calling in all of these different examples of people who are takers, right? So when you identify the role, it's easier for you to also identify the lesson. So that's what I would say about that. Yeah, so it's related to, it's important before you do the forgiveness, because you don't want to forgive one person and then just call in another same archetypal dynamic because you didn't really fully understand the role they were playing. So I hope that answered. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Let's see, I'm gonna answer one more question. Oh, I'll answer this one. I gotta ask, how does dating work being in your home frequency? Well, what I find in general in terms of like being in your home frequency is that you, again, this is kind of like the false self and the true self thing, right? You kind of move from this place where you're calling in people that you have karmic agreements with, right? And you kind of start to move into that place where you're calling in, I want to say, higher level soulmates. You're calling in dharmic relationships. You're calling in people where you have a divine appointment with them, where you basically said, when I get to this certain level of loving myself, and I get to the certain level of awareness, of of consciousness on the planet, and I want to live my purpose, and I want to live my dharma. I want you to show up because we have work to do together, right? So then you start to call in those level of relationships, and not just in terms of dating, but also in terms of people that you're going to be creating with. You're going to be finding those people that you have divine appointments with to create beauty in the world, to create, do projects that are going to be transformative for people. You know, all of that kind of stuff. You're going to be calling that in on every level of your life, not just in terms of like, you know, dating and romantic love, but you're going to be calling in those like high level soulmates. Sometimes I call over soulmates. You know, you're going to be absolutely calling in those people because you've mastered a lot of your Earth School lessons. When you really are fully in your home frequency and you're broadcasting that out consistently, it is a game changer. And that's why it's one of, actually, if you are in the portal, you can go back to How to Raise Your Vibration, because that was like the second class I had in this school, because it's such a fundamental concept. And I also talk about and reinforce that notion of, you know, being able to play your pure tone, because we are all part of the cosmic orchestra. We are all here. We all are created with a very unique energy signature. And it's like when you're not in tune, it's like you're trying to sing your song in someone else's voice. That's really what it equates to. Everyone's voice is needed, and that's why everyone has to really find that home frequency for themselves and embody that. Everything will come from that. And that's how I feel. So being in your home frequency and being in self-love and all of that for me are really like the game changers of moving from the old paradigm to creating heaven on earth. So I hope that answers all of your questions. And as I said, next month we'll be talking about removing blocks, clearing blocks. Just we're going to go in depth in general to talk about what do we do when we discover that we have a block, and how do we let that go, to end the year out with sort of just like that cleansing and purification. And we'll have a restorative yoga guest teacher. My co-creator, Jared Admi, is going to be doing some movement. So we're going to be closing the end of the year out with a really yummy series on clearing blocks. So thank you all so much. I love you all. Happy Sunday. Have a beautiful rest of your week. And whatever you celebrate, whatever your practice tradition is, you know, how you bring in these times, whether they're holy days to you or not, stay in love and stay in your joy and enjoy all of your time with your loves and your family, even if it's just having a week off from work. All right, I love you all. Talk to you so soon. Peace.